Let's all play a fun game called Ben just drank a huge cup of chai tea. Let's see how long before he has to interrupt the game to go to the toilet.
We can make it a competition because I'm drinking a cup of chamomile tea.
When I do pee, I will do it in character.
Yes. Am I supposed to come up with a character? Psh, doesn't matter. I'll just make one up on the spot.
Hakan said we don't need to do any preparation.
Wicked.
Yeah.
This is exactly my kind of game.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special bonus patron episode of Because Language. For this one, we're playing a role-playing game. It's called Dialect, a game about language and how it dies. In the game, you build a scenario, you build characters, and you are in an isolated situation with the people you're playing with. You build language, you build words, you share them, and then over the course of the game, the isolation is breached and the language that you've created stops being used. So you get to see what happens when a language is built up and then dies. Dialect comes from Thorny Games, and if you're a long-time Talk the Talk listener, you might remember how in 2016 we did an interview with Hakan Seyalıoğlu and Catherine Himes of Thorny Games when the game first came out, when it was brand new, and at the time we said, hey, we should really do a playthrough, but we finally did it. We sat down with Hakan Seyalıoğlu of Thorny Games, and he conducted us through an entire game of Dialect. It's a long episode, but I think you'll find it very fulfilling. We're going to join just as Ben, Hedvig, and I are sitting around the table waiting for Hakan to join us.
Hakan's here.
Hakan!
Hakan!
Hello!
Hello.
How are y'all doing?
Good. We're excited.
Oh, good.
It's a real honor to have you, the game designer, here to take us through this, and we've been looking forward to this for a really long time.
Yeah, I know. We're very excited to get started. So before we get started, though, would love to just get to know you folks through intros, pronouns, where you're from, a little bit about you, just so we know where we're coming with. So I'm Hakan. Recently moved to Washington, D.C. about 6 months ago with Catherine, who's co-designer in the game. Before that, we were in the San Francisco Bay Area. Pronouns are he, him, and yeah, very excited to play with you folks. Cool. That's me. Would love to hear from you folks too.
I'm Hedvig. I'm a linguist, and I talk on Because Language about linguistics and languages. I also like role-playing games. I've played sort of D&D and other games when I was a teenager, and then lately I've been getting back into D&D with friends. I'm also a big fan of Friends at the Table, and I listen to them playing through part of Dialect, so I'm really excited. But they play so many games, I listen to them so much, so I don't think I'm gonna be. I also don't think it's a spoiler to have listened to it before, so I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be tons of fun.
I will go next because on my screen I am the next one along. I am Ben. I am also a presenter on Because Language. I am a teacher, and my preferred pronouns are he, him.
Oh, I forgot to do that.
Oh, you thankfully have them in your name. It seems like so. She, her, right? That big.
Yeah.
Great.
My name's Daniel. I'm in Because Language and been doing it for a number of years now. I am a role-playing noob. I haven't really done any, but I'm an enthusiastic learner, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I also like singular they.
Perfect. And Stephen?
Hi, I'm Stephen, or Steve for short, from the UK originally, now living in Germany with Hedvig. I'm Hedvig's husband, which is why I'm here. I'm not a linguist. I have played some role-playing games, but I haven't played or experienced Dialect in any form. Over the past few weeks, occasionally I've been saying, should I be checking out the rules? Should I be figuring out what I'm supposed to do? And Hedvig's like, no, it's okay. Well, we'll pick it up as we go. So I guess you've got at least one absolute noob here if you want to use me as a kind of audience surrogate to figure out. Oh, Ben as well.
Yeah, definitely a complete and utter unknown, this one.
My pronouns are he, him.
But Ben, you've played like D&D.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I know exactly how to be the most kind of annoying.
Sure, it'll be great. All right. Well, that's wonderful. Nothing else really, I think, that we need prep-wise. This is Dialect. Dialect is a game that myself and Catherine Himes made a few years ago by now. And the main premise in it, and this is one of our wonderful upside down copies. We had one batch that was printed upside down. That was good. Just by accident.
Okay, write that down, everyone. That's part of the test. Some of it is upside down.
Exactly. So in this game, we'll be telling the story of the community together. So in many role-playing games, especially if you're familiar with D&D, you might have experienced games where, the main purpose is to go around, make yourself as strong as possible. There's like one GM. Everyone else is kind of a player in the world that the GM is creating. But Dialect is in a genre of games that's a little different, right? So this game doesn't have a dungeon master. I'll facilitate, which means that I'm just the person who's in charge of making sure the rules are explained, that like kind of dynamics at the table are maintained, but I have no narrative authority over the story than anyone else. So everyone has the same authority to kind of act in the story, and it's a collaborative experience. So it's going to be a story where we all are having equal say in it and are building it up according to the structure and the rules that the game provides. Since we have some new folks at the table to role play, there's a little bit of a spiel that we like giving at the beginning of the book that I think would be helpful to go through. And that's kind of like 3 principles that we really try to keep in mind during play. And those are, first, be obvious. I think a lot of times in games like this, or creative endeavors in general, we have a tendency to be judging our contribution by some self-imposed metric of creativity or novelty. And that's really not the point, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're all having fun, that we're not getting in our own heads too much, right? Because the lower the barrier is to just going through and like saying what's on your mind, I think the more fun you'll have, rather than really trying to be the wittiest at any point in time. And
no.
But
no.
But this is sort of why we have Ben on the show.
Oh yeah.
oh dear.
Well, if that's your obvious, then that's great. So hopefully we'll be able to make that work. But the basic idea is by taking what's obvious to all of us together, we'll be able to make something that's not obvious to anyone, right? The second one is really to listen, right? Is another principle that we really try to instill in folks. The only way we're able to like make all of our stories come together into something cohesive is if we're not all just telling our own story, right? We listen to folks at the table. We're taking interest in really wanting to see where their story as a whole is going. And that's a really important principle from that perspective too. And just the third one that we always bring up is to be kind, right? Like the big principle that we want to stress in these games very often is that the players are more important than the game, right? So at any point in time, if you think someone's not having fun, if someone might seem excluded or for whatever reason just not enjoying themselves, that should take priority over the success of the game itself, right? So we to make space for them, fudge the rules, fudge the turn order, whatever you have to do, just to make sure that everyone at the table is having fun, right? Because that's more important than the integrity of the game or the integrity of the story or anything like that. So those are just some general principles that I like to talk about, especially when we have new folks at the table. Does anyone have any questions about role-playing games, collaborative storytelling games, something like that in general before we get started?
It's a pretty good list for like beginner DMs, I think. Mm-hmm. Like people who want to actually start running games. Like that is just like the cheat code to running a successful game, I think, which is like be obvious, listen to people, and be kind. Like you're there to make everyone's time a really, really good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. And in this one, all of us are going to be like mini GMs. So that's why we all need to keep those principles in mind. So one final mechanic that is good to cover in terms of a meta technique before we start is also the X card. Has anyone here played with an X card before? Do you know what an X card is? Hedvig does. Yeah. Okay, awesome.
I do not.
New to some folks. So what the X card is it's a tool we use in these collaborative storytelling games to make sure that the game is fun for everyone, right? We would usually have a small card that has an X on it in the middle of the table. And all that means is if something comes up during the game that affects your enjoyment of the game for any reason, right, to the negative. So this might be a topic comes up, someone introduces a theme, for example, that you don't enjoy, might be triggering for you in some way, or would hamper your enjoyment of the game overall. So it doesn't even have to be anything serious. It might be something, severe in terms of like a triggering event, trauma, but it also could just be like, hey, like my boss's name is Josh, and I'd rather there not be another Josh in the game because we're currently having an argument, and that would affect my enjoyment of it, right? Like it doesn't need to be for a particularly serious thing, so it could be. And if something like that comes up, what we would do if we're around the table is we kind of like point to the X card or tap it. Since we're on Zoom, we can just say X or kind of make an X with our fingers. And all that means is we'll rewind, take that content out, and just make another creative decision where that was introduced.
That's a really cool mechanic that I've never heard of before, but I immediately like the idea of.
It's a helpful one for collaborative games because so little is defined beforehand that you don't have to worry about having negated 3 hours of the GM's prep, right? We just kind of rewind back and we make a different decision. And so it's very easy to implement in these games. And one of the big principles that we like to keep in mind while we're using the X card is we don't ask why, right? Like that's one of the principles that like I like to set at the table because we're just glad folks are using it. It's not meant as a creative judgment, right? This is just people looking out for themselves and their own enjoyment. And we're just glad they're using it. We don't need justification. We need people to explain themselves, right? Sound good? All right,
Sounds
cool.
Great.
All right, so in that case, let us get started, and we are going to play Dialect. So, Dialect is a game about telling the story of a community that's gone into isolation by how their language changes over time. The game takes place over 3 ages, and in each of these ages, we'll see what happens to this community, going from the very birth and emergence of the community to the eventual death of the community itself in age 3. And in each of those steps, we're going to see what happens to their language as well. So, in this game, we're each going to have characters, someone to be our voice in the isolation, who will actually speak as and use this language that we're developing. And really, when I say language, you can think of it more like a dialect that we're developing over the course of the game. In each turn, we're going to define a new words according to some cards. That's going to have a meaning that's built off of the principles of the community. So there's going to be a story behind why we have all the new pieces of language that we do. Now, each game of Dialect starts by picking a backdrop. So the backdrops are the settings in which you will play. For this game, I'm going to facilitate. So usually you could facilitate and play at the same time, but usually with 5 players, it ends up being a little longer than what we have time for. So I'll facilitate and just kind of be on the outside. That means I'll take part in all the language building conversations, but I won't have a character of myself, but I'll play any NPCs or something like that that might come up in scenes. So that'll be what we do for that. Now, for a backdrop, usually when we play with folks for the first time, we recommend the Martian Outpost, which is an isolated Martian outpost that lost communications with Earth, and I'll further will then define it more for ourselves and see what their story is. But how does the outpost backdrop sound to everyone here? Does that sound like a good one?
Is there any way of making it? Maybe no. I think I was thinking if there's any way of making it not in space, but still an outpost.
Let's see. How about the second one?
Or maybe I'm being.
No, that's fine.
Obnoxious.
So the thing I worry about, Hedvig, is the next most obvious place is just like a real colonial setting, and I'm like, that's probably worse.
What about really far underground?
So the second one is actually the compounds, which is more like a group. So this is set a couple of decades in the past, in 1982, and is about a group that kind of make a compound. And where that is isn't really defined. We'll define that within the game itself. So I think that might be one that kind of suits that better. So how about we play that backdrop instead? Does that sound good?
Unless everyone thinks I'm being obnoxious.
No. That sounds great.
Bezos and Musk have just ruined Mars for you.
You just ruined space for me a little bit. And
you should not give them that kind of power. Space is amazing. They're just dicks.
But it's also, I've been reading like N.K. Jemisin and other like sci-fi fantasy things that aren't necessarily space, and it's pretty cool.
Jemisin is definitely not on trial here. That lady got mad chops when it comes to writing fantasy. So yes, I agree. Let's do a compound of some kind, and let's just hope we can communally steer it away from weird racist tropes that compounds and outposts so often hark back to.
Yep. So let's give that a shot. So let's do the compound. So first we begin with reading a little description of the compound. And here it says, we've seen what's to become the world, and we're not interested in being a part of it any longer. 200 strong in number, we decide to make 1982 the year that we found ourselves a new home. We built our compound at a breakneck pace. Until recently, we still had to venture to the outside world from time to time for necessary supplies. How we dreaded those departure and longed to be back amongst our own again. Mercifully, those days are now behind us, and for 20 years we have known true solitude. We have walls, we have barracks, and we produce enough food that we will never have to set foot in the outside world again. So let's try that one. And we can even change the year a little bit if we'd like. If we do want to try like a little futuristic compound, for example, we can take that 1982 and just fiddle with it a tiny bit. Maybe make it like 2030, right? Does that sound good for folks? Let's try that, because I think we're kind of like interested in technologically being a little in the future, but not in space. So let's try the compound, but in 2030. So,
cool. Okay, cool.
It. All right, awesome. Let's do
2030 it is.
And if anything else comes up that's like vaguely inconsistent with it being 2030, we'll fix it on the fly. It's not a big deal. So cool. The first thing we do after having picked the backdrop is to generate the aspects. So whenever we generate language in this game, and we'll get to that when we actually get to the turns, they're all going to be based off of something fundamental to the community, one of their aspects. These are real fundamentally defining traits of the community itself. So these are what make us special as a group. There are going to be 3 of them. And for each of them, I'll ask a question and we'll answer it together. Right? Kind of like by consensus, land on an answer. And then I will put that out on the play space in age 1. These aspects will change over time as the community grows and evolves too. So these will just be, they're on the very outside of the play space. Cool, so this is the play space. As you can see, it's divided into 3 ages. So if this was at a table, we'd have 2 have circular kind of strands with beads on it to separate the table into 3 ages. The very outside is age 1. That's where we're going to start play. And then after we go around the table once, we'll move into age 2. And then after we go through again, we'll go into age 3. And then after that, we just go into the epilogue. In each of the ages, we'll take index cards and lay them flat on the table. And those will be the aspects. So we'll place 3 of them outside the second ring, and those will be the aspects for age 1. And these are going to be, like I said, those defining aspects of the community. So cool. For a compound, our first question, the wayward flock. What about who we are made the compound a necessity? So why did we retreat into the compound?
I'm guessing pandemic might be a little on the nose.
A little too close.
Maybe.
Let's see if we can stretch our creative legs just a little bit further.
Actually, this is reminding me that I did play Dialect once in the last year, I guess, because I did have to axe a pandemic suggestion from a game.
What if we are sort of doing a little bit of an Israeli kibbutz type thing where we're just going, right, that's it, capitalism, not a thing, not happy with it, but we realize that we can't reject capitalism and still be in any way part of capitalism. So we've had to physically distance ourselves from any of those structures and potentially become totally self-reliant with no outside connections. And that's the only true way that we can really sort of reject the capitalist overlords who want to colonize Mars rather than help the people on Earth.
that sounds like it might be a missionary type. That sounds like wanting to accept new members, but I'm not sure. We're quite a small group, right?
Let's see.
200 strong.
200.
Yeah, 200. Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, I like it, but I'm thinking of how to make it more unique yet, because there's a lot of hippies who reject capitalism around the world, and we don't want to have all of them. Want to be smaller, I think. What if there's something more specific?
It sounds like we're a utopian movement.
What about anti-capitalism and anti-data surveillance? Maybe it's because I'm in Germany,
Oh, okay. I like that.
where everyone hates data gathering in every way. We just watched Now You See Me Too, where that was a part of the part of the plot, actually.
Data surveillance became so pervasive that what was required in order to fully opt out of all of it was to essentially sever all remaining ties, such that even stripping down to like the bare bones of like existing technological networks was not sufficient. We had to really, really cut ourselves off.
We needed, like in networking parlance, we needed a literal air gap between our community and every other aspect of the wider world.
And maybe there are so few people who want to, because it means like not having Instagram, right? It means like not having connection with your loved ones, and there's very few people who are up for that. I think that could be 200 people.
Yeah,
Okay,
that sounds great. And it could also just be, if there were more than 200 people, we picked our favorite 200 because of resource limitations, something like that too. Could also be possible. But anyway, that sounds fantastic. So how about for that one, we'll place example aspect. So it sounds like anti-surveillance, or like maybe even to like a radical degree. Like, what's a good way to summarize that in a few words?
A radical rejection of surveillance capitalism.
Data anarchy.
I like that word.
Is that a good one? Okay, and we all kind of know what that means, right, based on our discussion. So I think that sounds good. All right, cool. So our first aspect on the outside is data anarchy, where that's a rejection of surveillance capitalism to a radical degree. Okay, cool. Second one, more than walls. What special property about the compound keeps us secure?
Ooh. I've been thinking about this since we talked about compounds. Okay. See what you guys think about this. I think that we have taken over or like come into possession of the Kerguelen Islands, also known as the Desolation Islands. Do you guys know about them?
No.
I do not.
The Kerguelen Islands are dope. They are essentially France's most remote island colony, but it was never inhabited by humans, so you get away from all of the like creepy colonialism vibes. And they're just sort of like not very far away from Antarctica and are a fairly substantial archipelago of islands that are like a couple of 1,000 miles from anything at all. And to get to them and to sort of supply them and all that kind of stuff is extraordinarily difficult. Like planes and boats both really struggle with it. So I was thinking that could be our sort of like air gap approach. And it could also be the self-limiting factor for numbers as well. We could say like, hey, anyone who wants to join us can come, but you got to get here. Have fun.
And we looked at a map now. It's sort of like almost equal distance between Madagascar, Perth, and Antarctica.
Yeah, exactly. It's about as far away as you can get from anything at all.
Yeah, that's super desolation. I know about Disappointment Islands, but now I know about Desolation Islands as well. Yeah, I like it.
All right, let's do that. So and let's see, I think I looked it up to,
Kerguelen. Perfect.
All right, so we have made our compound on the Kerguelen Islands. And for our third one, now this is a free aspect, so the choice is ours. Anything that we think would be interesting to explore in this game that would play well with the fact that we're on this remote island chain and our extreme data anarchists. We're now going to pick one more aspect that we think would be fun to play with here. So anyone have any suggestions?
I'm not totally sure of what's within the bound of aspect, but what about issues regarding like food security, what it's going to be possible to sort of grow there, as well as the sort of difficult climate just for living. What about we're near enough in the future that those basic problems have been solved by some kind of technology that we can bring with us, like that we have. So we have a certain amount of freedom and security because of those technologies that exist, whether that be just the ability to grow things inside hothouses that are, pretty safe, and the seeds are very fruitful because they've got a little bit of genetic modification or whatever, something along those lines.
I think something like that sounds great. I think this is probably a place where it helps to be to nail it down and be a little specific. So if it is the hothouses, or if it's a special type of
algae.
Algae or genetically modified seeds that have made it so that they'll grow in a wide variety of climates. Just nailing it down and picking one of them will probably make it easier for us to build off of.
Or with the ocean,
what about
maybe algae, like you say?
I like the idea of having how in some communities it's just we have this one thing yaks, and we use their fur for this, we use their dung for the floor, we use their milk for this, we use their bones for this, and you just you can just have your entire community run by one thing. What if, because I've seen algae bricks, house bricks. You can make a lot of things from algae, I think.
Okay, I'm happy to roll with algae,
and we don't have to be very scientifically. Even if some of that is scientifically dubious, that's fine. It all sounds very plausible to me.
So we essentially have algae as our sort of technological fulcrum about which kind of our society is built on and relies on, right? It's used in our building products. It's used to fertilize things, to sustain us. It's just central to our we figured out algae maybe, and that was the thing that actually allowed us to do this.
Does that mean we're religious about it too, or are we still atheist rationalists?
Some of us are. Some of us are kind of a little bit wooey about it, but some of us aren't.
Oh, okay.
We feel differently.
What a great potential friction point later in the game.
Yeah, so I think that's great. I think we'll be able to nail that down a little bit in the questions that follow. So for this aspect, let's see, what shall we call it? Algae everywhere could be one.
Yeah.
Let's see that one.
That's perfect.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So now we kind of have the overall kind of bones of what the story is going to be about, or what's going to start about. We have our data anarchy, our anti-surveillance capitalism, which is really what drove us to our isolation. We know where we are on the Kerguelen Islands, very cold, very inaccessible, very remote, and we have this great reliance on our algae for power, for food, for building materials. Probably for clothing, I would guess.
Yeah.
Naturally. Cool. That's great. So next, I'm going to ask everyone one question to kind of add a little bit more detail into this outline about the community, because we kind of have a vague idea, but let's put a little specifics onto that now. And so I'll start with just the order on my screen. And so that'll be with you, Hedvig, to start. And this says, the first question is, where did we come from and how did we come to know one another?
Ooh, that's a good question. So it has to be, academia is too close at hand. I don't want to use that. But I was thinking of algae scientists being in a conference and having agreement about things. But that's a bit, I'm trying to think if it's the algae that brought us together or the ideology of rejecting data surveillance, and I'm not sure which it is. Maybe it was the rejection of data surveillance, and then everyone was very dissatisfied for a long time but couldn't do anything about it, and then when someone came with this idea of how you could use algae, it was possible to separate. So where's a place that people who don't want to be surveilled meet? Because it can't be in forums online, I think. Or it would have to be super dark web. Which feels like that's sketchy. So maybe it would have to be people who already were in close proximity to each other. Maybe it was like a small town in France or a small village, and the locals already were dissatisfied with the surveillance from the state, because then they could meet just generally because they were in the same place. I think I'm finding it a bit hard to pull together. Does anyone else have any ideas?
And maybe like there was some group like in one village that like was the core of this movement, and then maybe attracted more people, right, to there, brought more people around the world who like heard of it, even though they weren't able to talk together, that eventually formed some critical mass, maybe brought in some algae scientists, for example, that were able to at some point pitch this idea, right?
Right.
Let's just leave, right? Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, so they met because they were all in a geographical spot in France, but they noticed that France was still too not remote enough. But because the majority of people were French citizens or could become French citizens, they applied to the government to be like, you don't do anything with this effing island anyway. And we're really disruptive to you all the time with all of our GDPR complaints. We promise to not file any more GDPR complaints if you just give us this piece of land to build on.
Oh, so they were a big enough thorn in the government side that they allowed them to go? Okay,
annoy them until they give us what we want. I like it.
And so do you think all of us were from this village, or were there some outsiders that came as well?
Do we have an online presence for a while that we didn't really like doing, but we did it anyway? So we could attract?
I think it was all word of mouth and like pieces of paper on telephone posts with those little things you can like pull. And there's like, we meet at the village hall because we've taken over the village. So we meet at town hall. And that's why so few people as well.
I like the idea that we were probably setting up like ad hoc networks that we controlled, like with Pringles cans and stuff from like one mountaintop to another, being like, this is the only way we can communicate.
And were we all like born in, like, did we all come from this village, or did some people come to the village because of their idealism as well?
Yeah.
Either way, it totally works. Like,
some people found out about it because of wacky news stories and they were attracted.
Oh yeah, that's true. There was like, after a while there had to be a rule that you can talk to journalists anymore because we're tired of like being featured in like
Fight Club. We had to institute Fight Club rules.
Yeah, but so I would say that maybe 70% of people already came from that area, but there were outsiders who came as well.
Perfect. That sounds great. Cool. Let's go to Daniel next for the next question. What does the compound look like physically? Why is maintaining it so difficult?
It's difficult to maintain because that area is so cold and remote. We tried to make it technological looking, but it didn't really work, and many of us just wanted it to look homey as well. So there's a patina of hominess and comfort, but if you peel back that patina a little bit, you find some pretty intense structural engineering going on, both above ground and below.
And so it looks kind of homey from the outside, but it's a bit artificial just because of the measures we had to go to erect it and build it and all that stuff. Is that
I think so.
Summary, Daniel?
What do you think?
Great. Yeah, no, I like the artificial home thing, like artificially kind of looking like a quaint French village in some way, when really it's like built off these algae bricks and stuff.
Yeah. We've got like algae brick geodesic domes, but with the fleur-de-lis painted on the outside.
Cool. So Ben, next one's for you. Where do members of the compound spend private time? Are there communal spaces?
There definitely are communal spaces. I would envision it to be probably not structurally dissimilar in terms of how things are organized from something like McMurdo Station in Antarctica, which would be like sort of fairly substantial communal sort of hall-y dining room type leisure spaces where the entire community potentially could fit in for the needs of communicating and conducting sort of like culturally significant moments, birthdays, deaths, that sort of thing. But similarly, there are private spaces for all the members of the community, but those private spaces maybe don't look quite so private as we would think of them in a contemporary Western society. So we would think of private spaces being like you have your own entire house with all of the necessary facilities in that house, and that's your private space. Our private spaces maybe are a little bit more like cabins or shelters, partially underground, made of these algae bricks. And these shelters would provide short-term everything we need. So, like a bed and a sink and a toilet and that sort of thing. But if we wanted to eat or really do much at all, we would probably need to avail ourselves of some of these slightly more communal spaces.
And are those shelters connected to the communal spaces, or do you have to go outside to get to the communal spaces?
I'm going to say that is an ongoing project, and that some of the spaces have been connected via sort of like algae brick arch tunnels. So they allow for relatively easy commute back into those communal spaces, but some by design. Some people elected to have their personal space actually quite far away from the compound because they're a little bit more isolationist. And so connecting all of them is a sort of ongoing project to sort of give members of the community purpose and direction.
Perfect. All right, and Stephen, the last one will be for you. For whom is life the hardest in the compound, and why?
Oh, good question.
The technicians and scientists whose job it is to tend and grow and look after and harvest the algae have to be sort of out in the ocean, or whichever portion of the ocean or bay has been ring fenced in order to grow this algae. It's both technically difficult, a challenge to actually grow this stuff and harvest it, but it's also very high pressure, given that everybody knows that pretty much all of the security, both like food security and shelter, if it's all built out of algae, is dependent on them doing their job well. And, a lot of that is down to chance. So it's going to be difficult for them every day to fix problems and bring in the algae as and when, and presumably to sort of expand it as well in order to try and create as much buffer as possible. If there's any kind of algae failures, then they want to try and give themselves as much leeway as they can.
Perfect. Cool. So to summarize everything a little bit, so we came from a small village, a very privacy-minded, ideologically oriented group in France. About 70-80% of us were originally there after some quirky news exposés about all these people in France who refuse to have an online presence, I guess. Some more people joined us well, started coming to the community to seek them out. The community was such a thorn in the side of the EU and France in particular that at some point they gave us permission to go to the Kerguelen Islands to get out of their hair, stop our constant GDPR complaints, and so we were allowed to go there and make that our home. The settlements are very necessarily stark and industrial because of the harsh climate, because of the limited building resources, but an effort is made to make them look homely and cozy as much as possible from the outside, even though sometimes the patina is very thin, right? There are communal spaces. You can think of it kind of like a McMurdo station, where there are cafeterias or hallways. There are things that connect maybe a few large base buildings, but individual shelters are generally away from that building at various distances. There are ongoing projects to actually connect them, so we don't have to walk outside all the time. But at the moment, there's still a lot of going outside that we have to do in this harsh climate, which also makes it why being a technician has to maintain the algae is so difficult and is one of the most difficult jobs in the compound itself. Cool, that sounds great. And that's our little summary. So let's go back into the play space now, because now we're each going to make our characters. So now is when we will first experiment with the card decks and see if they work for everyone. So the way this works is I'm going to deal everyone 3 archetypes. You should see a little card back with the number 3 on top of your portrait If you click that, that should show you the 3 cards that you have in your hand. Now, for me, I'm just going to put one of them out on the play space to explain what this is. So you can see one of my archetypes in my hand is the Explorer. We're each going to pick one of the archetypes, and that's going to be kind of the basis for our character. And then we'll kind of define out what that means after that. So here, for the Explorer, it says, we rely on you to venture beyond where the rest of us do, to push the boundaries and uncover new potential. People talk to you about the unknown. And then there it says, you identify with all of the aspects, and you know there's undiscovered potential in one. So after everyone has picked their archetype, we'll go around and do little short introductions about different characters. We have different names that we can. I have a name list for this for its backdrop that we can use for inspiration for names if we'd like. But the only thing mechanically that's required at this point, or that's really imposed, is this bottom part about identifying with the aspects, right? So not everyone is going to feel the same way about all of the aspects of the community, right? Maybe there's someone who actually is very skeptical about the algae, doesn't like eating it, doesn't like the feel of it, right? And tries to, like, has some other things that they've, like, snuck in with themselves, or only, like, engages in that world kind of reluctantly. Maybe there are some people that have some doubts about the data anarchy system that we have, right? Maybe they're the kids of someone who's really into it, right? And like they got dragged along a little bit. And maybe there are some people who just always really wanted to go to the Kerguelen Islands, and like that's why they ended up as part of this expedition. The only point here being is that not everyone is going to feel exactly the same way about these pillars of the community, right? And the little text at the bottom is what defines that for each of the archetypes. So the Explorer, for example, does identify with all of these. They're very important parts of their life, and generally they follow the main like communal interpretation of that aspect. But they also have a little something special about it, where it says, you know, there's undiscovered potential in one. So if I was introducing the Explorer, I would take this, I put it down, right? I'd say what my character's name is. I'd be like, okay, I'm such and such and such. You know, I work in the algae fields doing this. Like, I think maybe there's like a particular like places off the islands that are very generally more hospitable towards the farming operations we do on the algae. And so we regularly have to go out on these like small boats we have to go and find them and explore. And like, that's what my character does. That's why I'm the Explorer. And give a little physical description of them, say who they are, they could give their pronouns, and then at the end talk about their relationship to the aspects. What does it mean that you identify with those three? And which one do you feel like there's undiscovered potential in? Like the fact that there's undiscovered potential in one, maybe the Explorer believes that the Kerguelen Islands actually have some undiscovered like geothermal potential, and like all the stuff that we're doing with the algae like could be supplemented at some point. Maybe they have some, maybe they believe there's some like mystical property in the algae themselves or in these farms, right? All sorts of different pieces of potential for them. And that's could be how I interpret this character if I was making a character from it. But bottom line point, that's the only mechanical restriction on how you make your characters. After everyone has picked an archetype that they're excited about, you know, you can just say which one you picked. So if I was doing this, I would say, okay, I picked the Explorer, and once everyone has picked theirs, we would then go on to introductions. So you don't have to have everything figured out by the time you say which one you picked. You can just say what archetype you picked, and then fill in the blanks as we go on. Okay, hope that wasn't too long-winded. Go ahead, pick your archetypes, say what you picked as you pick them, and then after everyone has picked, we'll do introductions. Does anyone know which one they'd like to play from their hand?
I'm going to choose the Magician. Is there a way to, if I drag and drop, is that right? Is that
That
okay?
should work, in theory.
Okay.
Perfect.
No one understands how you accomplish what you do. You have your secrets. People talk to you when they've exhausted all rational options. And then you
So cool.
identify with only one of the aspects. Your secret lies within it.
Very cool.
I can go next. Actually, I'll drag it onto the field. I am the artist, right? The isolation has a certain charm to it, thanks to you. You keep us going when things look the darkest. People talk to you about your masterpiece, and I identify with two of the aspects, and one of those two is my muse.
Perfect. And we'll talk about what that means once everyone has gotten their archetypes picked.
Daniel, have you picked?
I have. I have chosen the healer. When we hurt, we come to you. You make sure we're ready to serve the isolation for another day. People talk to you about their pain. I identify with two of the aspects, but one of them is the cause of our pain.
Ooh, I like
Perfect.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I've picked as well.
Right.
I picked the sage. You know so much of the past, so much that we're doomed to repeat. People talk to you about burning questions. You identify with two of the aspects. One is the source of your knowledge.
All right, wonderful. So if you could move that onto the play space too, Hedvig.
Yep.
All right, great. So while we take a couple minutes as a little break, while we kind of form the rest of our characters in our minds.
Here he is, Ben the
All
man.
right.
Had pretend. Sorry, am I late? Oh, I'm a minute late. I apologize.
No.
I was just filling my partner in on everything we've done so far.
Excellent.
That wasn't a joke. I literally just did that. I was like, oh, it's got three aspects, and these are the three aspects, and then we've each got a character, and then we had to choose from these cards, and I had like three different cards, and this is the one I chose.
Right after we do introductions, we'll start actually doing the language part of the games.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing in the explanation. She was like, "So, like, what do you do?" I was like, "I don't know yet. It's really fun."
Yeah, we haven't actually gotten to the turn structure yet, but right after characters is when we'll get into what happens every turn. So this is great. Does anyone need example character names, anything like that? Have you all thought of names for your characters as well?
I have been given a name, and I apologize to everyone ahead of time.
Oh, your partner made a name for you?
Yep. Before, like, more than an hour ago, I was like, I got to play this game. Give me a name, whatever it is. And so, yeah, she might have been in a bit more of a fantasy space at the time, but that's okay because I'm the artist and that's going to fit in with my character.
Yeah, that sounds
I
perfect.
could use some help, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
so
could use a suggestion.
I think I would like to know what words of the language are going to sound like before.
So generally, the most of the words that we generate are going to be repurposed or mashed up words in the language that we're actually speaking as players, right? So there are some special cards that kind of introduce new words from actual phonemes and things, but that's a smaller percentage of the new words that we come up with. For the most part, they're going to be like repurposing of existing words into different contexts, take two words, mash them together, take something from a sound in nature, right? Stuff like that. So like and I'm not a linguist, so I apologize for misusing any of these things, but the phonemic inventory we would be using is generally from the language that we're speaking as players.
Bad English. Got it.
Is that helpful? Or?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I think I know a name. Yeah, I think I'm good with my character. How do you feel, Steve?
Yeah. I'm going to pick a name from this optional names list.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They also
Daniel, did you
names.
need to avail yourself of the services of the artist in terms
Yes, please.
of?
That would be wonderful.
So you're the healer, aren't you?
Yes.
I think that you should be called. Your first name should be Danny, so that's good for either gender. So you could go with a D-A-N-I if you wanted to.
Got it.
And I think your last name should be Louette.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Danny Louette. And you spell that in whatever sort of vaguely French way you want to.
I have.
All right, perfect. So for each of these, I'm just going to take one of these little character tenties on the play space and put it next to the character cards. If we're playing in person, we would kind of take an index card, fold it in two, and then put our character on there. Okay, cool. So Sage, being the first one on my list, let's hear about your character.
Okay, so I was thinking, so the Sage card says, I'm just going to enlarge it. You know so much of the past, so much that we're doomed to repeat. People talk to you about burning questions. You identify with two of the aspects. One of them is the source of your knowledge. So I'm going to play a man who's in his, I'd say, 60s. And he is the one who has filed the most GDPR complaints and knows the most about our exit from the data system. He identifies very much with the data security, data integrity aspect. He identifies a bit with the reason of being desolate islands, and the algae is just ends to mean if you could get geothermal energy or whatever, he wouldn't care so much. And whenever something comes up, like someone's like, oh, I've just discovered that I gave birth to a child and she's been, without our knowledge, has been enrolled in the French healthcare system or whatever, I'm the person they come to with their burning questions about how to deal this. And I think he had a different name, but he has taken the name. This is very stupid, but it got stuck in my brain, so I'm going to go with it. He's taken the name Anti-Admin.
Cool.
I love it. And it makes my name in a second seem so much less dumb. So I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. And so it sounds like Anti-Admin's also somewhat of a, like, are they, is he like a moral authority in some ways because of like how much he identifies with this, like,
I think so.
It sounds like he was like one of the originators of this like ideology, right?
I think he's quite zealous and judgmental.
Awesome.
What was the first word you said there? Sorry, Hedvig, before judgmental?
Zealous.
Zealous. Sorry, couldn't catch it.
I've been playing Crusader Kings. It's a trait.
I also played too much Crusader Kings.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Magician. Let's do the Magician next.
Okay, I'm hoping there's not going to be too much overlap here because I take it that your aspect was being the data anarchy aspect, but maybe in a slightly different way. My sort of prompt is I identify as one of the aspects and my secret lies within it. So I'll give you the name first. The name that I came up with is Esther Forte, Forte, because I saw it on a packet of medicine that's on my desk. The Forte, that is, not the Esther. The Esther was in the example names. I looked for a surname that's sort of French. Forte is a French surname, right?
Sure.
Anyway, Esther Forte, she was in charge of ensuring that the people who came onto the compound did not sneak in any devices that could be used to, attach to the outside world. And because the range of devices that could be attached is so wide now, and the means of attachment are so wide, there was an incredibly strict prohibition. So pretty much anything electronic, above the level of a very old calculator would have been confiscated if it was brought on. But she sort of used this position of power to keep her own device, which is still air-gapped. She actually still, believes in the data anarchy, no connections cause. But what she did was, what she did in her own mind, this is how it's justified. She got there's like I think a read-only version of Wikipedia that you can sort of compress and download all of the, let's say, English or French. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do the operating language, but the English language Wikipedia is larger, I take it. So she wanted to take as much information as she could. She's compressed that. She's got it on a device, so she has access to it, but completely secretly. She was pretty much the only one who was able to do this because she had the most power in preventing other people from bringing devices onto the island. So she seems to be a magician. Nobody understands how she accomplishes what she does because she has access to all this information that other people don't.
I like that.
Perfect. And I assume that this is still quite a valuable skill, given that no one else has access to all this information. Even among stuff like what are the geographic coordinates of the next island, like in the chain? What do you do if someone is suffering from some sort of mineral deficiency or hypothermia or like medical knowledge, right? All sorts of different things. It seems like Esther just always seems to have the answer and never really reveals why.
Right.
Yeah, wonderful. I like that. I like that a lot.
All right. And let's go to our artists next.
Okay, so one, just to sort of like convey how this character sort of just arrived as far as the community is concerned. When everyone sort of like went to the Kerguelen Islands, as we mentioned, there had been sort of like vague kooky news stories, and everyone basically just sort of went, fuck it, up sticks, we're going. But it's known, right? Like this place is known, and who are there is known. And so that open invitation that we kind of nibbled around the edges of earlier of like, hey, anyone who wants to join us, who believes what we believe, just like show up. So basically, relatively recently in the sort of auspices of the community. So the community was there, it got set up. And then a while later, a very small, like a concerningly small one-person sailboat arrived at the island in just a horrific state of disrepair, right? Like think Jack Sparrow just stepping off the mast of the sinking dinghy at the beginning of like Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. And my character who's stepped off the boat, it's a she, and sort of just waited patiently by the shore, not wanting to sort of be rude to anyone. And when members of the community kind of came up and were like, hi, she just sort of said, look, hello, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Grinchelwald, the Harbinger of Ubermensch.
My God.
Just in case you missed that, that's Grinchelwald, the Harbinger of Ubermensch. That is my name. That is my full name. I am an artist, a creator, and I am here to contribute to your community in as many ways as I am able to contribute. I know about this community. I've sort of done preliminary research. I have a real strong affinity with two of the key aspects, being as a bit of a change, I'm going to go with the isolation. So like the Kerguelen Islands themselves, I feel a deep sort of connection to them, and also to the technology, which is sort of the central aspect of what allows everything. I see something profoundly artistically significant about one real tangible aspect of existence literally being the ultimate building block of an entire society. That core concept to me is profoundly artistically fascinating. And one of those two aspects is the muse through which all of my artistic work is sort of lensed through. Do I tell that to you guys now, or do I keep that to myself?
You can tell it to us now. Our characters might not know about it, but I think it's usually fun for players as humans to know about them.
So my sort of the Kerguelen Islands themselves are my ultimate creative muse through which I am slowly constructing some sort of ultimate masterpiece, which people like to ask me about all the time. But aside from the ultimate masterpiece, I'd like to think that I am a useful sort of member of the community, in that like you can always sort of rely on me to just be playing a nice fun tune on a Friday night in the communal space, or you can sort of find me just randomly giving a beautiful painting to someone for their home just to sort of spruce it up a little bit. Like I just make stuff, and I just try and make everyone's sort of experience just a little bit less grim and cold and Antarctic.
Very nice, very nice. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. Maybe. Cool. So last we have the healer. So Daniel, let's hear about what's Esther's pronouns, by the way? I don't think I caught that.
Grinchelwald goes by she, her, or they.
Or they. Okay, perfect. And
yeah,
I don't think I caught.
Esther was she, her. Yeah.
I came to the community a little bit later. My name's Danny, and my pronouns are he, him, his. And I came because of I was actually against the aims of the community, but then something happened, a loss that I suffered that I have never talked about with anybody in the community. But it has deepened me and made me more empathetic. And the two aspects that I identify with are the data anarchy, the privacy and surveillance, because I know what happened. And then I am into the algae. I love technology. I like what's happening. I'm constantly impressed with what the technicians come up with. The aspect that is painful for me is the Kerguelen Islands. I have deep ties to place, and I miss where I used to be. And these islands have a way of getting to you after a while. This place. I'd be happy to do this somewhere else, but this is where we are. So that's the pain for me.
Oh, that sounds perfect. And could you tell me a little bit more about the healer part of it? So do people come to talk to you as like a therapist because you kind of like know what people have gone to? Like why do people come to talk to you about let me remember what the phrase is. Is it about their pain, right? So how do you help them with it? Do they just naturally gravitate towards you?
I don't have any background in counseling or anything like that. I just seem to be the one that people always come to with this. And maybe this is because I don't know much and I don't say much, but I listen and I allow the sadness to have a space.
Perfect. All right, wonderful.
You're the Mr. Rogers of the community. You've got no formal training in like any kind of psychological anything, but you are just a phenomenal sort of like emotionally salient human being.
Yeah.
In maybe a more like angsty, tortured way, it sounds like too. But
I carry a lot of my own pain, and so people feel that.
Goth Mr. Rogers. Got it.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, I just want to make sure we all have reasons why like others come to talk to us, and that sounds great. That people kind of naturally gravitate towards you when they have pain, when they want to talk about something. I think is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, fantastic. So now I will put that deck away, and now we're ready to get started. So everyone should have 3 cards in their hands. So these are 3 concepts. And each turn, well, let me phrase it this way. Every turn of dialect has 3 phases. Those are make a connection, build a word, have a conversation, right? Every single turn of the game is going to go that exact same way. Make a connection, build a word, have a conversation, okay? Just remember that there are 3 phases, and then what they are will be pretty clear after I start explaining it. The first phase, make a connection. For that, you'll take one of the cards from your hand. For example, here I'll take friend. All right. Now, make a connection means I'm going to take that card and I'm going to connect it to one of the aspects in the community. When I do that, I'll explain why that aspect has led to us having a special word for this concept. I'm not going to define what this new word is at this point, but I'm going to say like the reason why. So let's say for friend, I might tie that to let's say data anarchy, right? And so here I'll explain why our word for friend was affected, or we have a new word for friend, because of our data anarchy aspect. So I might say like, the reason why we have a new word here is, let's say,
Facebook ruined friend.
Yep, Facebook ruined friend. Yeah, exactly. Maybe we just have so much baggage around the word friend because of Facebook. That's a great reason.
That's wow.
That we have a new word for it.
You played this game before.
Yeah.
You're going to win.
No, that's a great explanation. But I haven't made a new word for it, right? I've just said why we have a new word for it. Now, we'll have a little conversation where everyone can suggest words for, what this new word might be. I ask the player whose turn it is, will choose ultimately what becomes the new word, what our new word for friend is. But that doesn't mean that I have to come up with it on my own, is the point I'm trying to make. I can say like, I'm looking for a word that kind of feels like this, that kind of goes this way, right? And so other folks can give suggestions. If I do have just the perfect word in my mind already, I can just be like, okay, cool. I already know what it's going to be. The word's going to be this. And so that's going to be our new word for friend. So in this example here, like when I put down friend, I might say, I think that because this was like such a deliberate motion where we like deliberately eliminated the word friend from our vocabulary. We picked a word that just never appeared online, right? That like denoted some amount of connection to be our word for friend. Like just something that was as removed from the internet, from the digital world as possible. What that word is, where it comes from, I don't really have a great idea, but I'd love to hear what other people might suggest for what our word here could be. So what do you folks think? What might we have decided to call friend based on that? I was thinking like certainly something tied to like the physical world in terms of geology, like actual tangible like soil, dirt, rocks, stuff like that might make sense, but that doesn't quite give that friendship vibe to it. Anyone have anything striking people in terms of like what lines of thoughts might be appropriate there, or
in terms of physicality, something to do with like the body as well, maybe even like the face or head or even the eyes, the fact that it's not possible to be friends in a data anarchy society unless you, or almost impossible, unless you have like face-to-face contact in some way, or at least physical proximity.
And I feel like maybe I'm just kicking out the part of the word that keeps coming back to me is am, because there are so many words like friendship, because we're kind of French based. And so the French word ami comes back to me. So having that part somewhere in there just seems natural.
I was thinking words for physical person-to-person connection. So clasp, grasp, grip, all could be viable stand-ins for friend. Oh, that's my grip, Bob. He's just such a great guy.
Oh yeah, because like, and maybe that's like something that friends do when they greet each other too. Possibly.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Actually,
like we grip hands, or we grip forearms, or something like that. I don't know.
No, I think that sounds great. I do
That's
like.
really good.
I like the French phonetic piece of it too, but I think it might be a little hard to put both of them at once. So I'm going to pick the grip suggestion. So let's do grip. Is our word for friend.
Sorry,
right?
Daniel.
No,
that's cool.
I
That's
mean,
cool.
it's all collaborative, right? Like it's not a judgment on anything. I think that's
It's
a
all
wonderful idea
collaborative,
too.
and I need to collaborate the most.
And I collaborated the best. Yeah. So here we'll make that now. So grip will be our new word for friend, right? Grip. Okay. So I put grip down, and I will say friends in parenthesis as being our little word for it. So we did make a connection, was when we played the card on the table. Build a word is when we came up with our new word based on that aspect, right? And the third thing now is have a conversation, where two of the characters will have a conversation based on the prompt at the bottom. And the prompt at the bottom is a revelation among friends, right? So for this, usually if it's, so since I don't have a character and I kind of took the first turn, it's a little wonky. But here, normally we would pick one of the characters, or the person whose turn it is would pick another character out to have a short conversation with, where the only restriction is that both of the players will demonstrate their character's relationship to this word in some way, either by using it or conspicuously avoiding to use it, right? So not all the characters are going to love all the words, not all the characters use all the words all the time, but by the end of this conversation, we should understand how both of the characters in the scene feel about this word. And the prompt for the scene is revelation among friends. So who do we think are friends here? And who might be able to think of something their character might want to reveal to another one?
Wait, both the healer and the artist arrived after
Later.
the initial settlement. Which I think means that my character is sort of just still on the fence about them, so I don't think we're friends. And I think my character is also like a little bit skeptical of like Esther's vast amount of information.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're establishing,
I'm not friends with anyone.
You're not friends with anyone.
Yeah.
Oh,
no. So I think it was among friends, right? So I think some of the other people. Maybe, how do you pronounce the first name, Ben, again? Grinchald?
Grinchelwald.
Yep. Grinchald and Esther are both, and Danny are both sort of newer. Maybe they're more friends because of that. I don't know.
I can absolutely
I got that too.
improv a conversation with Danny.
Cool. And so the prompt for the conversation is a revelation among friends. Adhere to that as closely or as loosely as you want. It's just meant as a prompt to get you going. And by the end, we can call the scene and end the scene when we both heard you use the word grip, or explicitly, kind of conspicuously not use the word, right? So go ahead. Where do you think this revelation is taking place? Kind of set the scene before we start talking a little bit.
I was thinking that I have sort of knocked on Danny's algae door, algae curtain, algae plastic wrap that sort of affixes the front of his domicile. And because Danny, like myself, came fairly late, I'm thinking that his is one of the ones that is fairly removed from the central community. So I'm kind of taking it upon myself to make sure that Danny doesn't, just by the nature of the distance, just naturally sort of become excluded. So that's why I'm sort of knocking on his algae flap.
Grindelwald, what a surprise.
Danny, I'm so sorry to bother you. I hope I'm not putting you out. I'm not finding you in the middle of something where you'd rather be alone right now.
No, that's great. Anybody's welcome.
Excellent. I've actually, I've brought something for you if that's not too unusual.
That's very kind. What is it? Oh, it's in one of those. It's all wrapped up. What is it? What have you got there?
So I've actually prepared a small work for you. I know you haven't been on the island long, so I sort of imagined that you've pretty much only got what you came with here in the hut. So I thought a small sort of token of our burgeoning sort of grip ship would be something that you might find quite helpful. Or at least a little bit, Kerguelen, as much as I love it, it can be a little bit hostile, a little bit harsh. So I thought something just to soften some of those craggy edges off this fair island might help you out.
Well, thank you very much, Grinchel. I've got to ask though, how do you do it? I've seen the kinds of things that you do around here. I know how you love this place, and and it's great. It's a great place, and I'm really glad to be here on the mission. And how do you manage? How do you come to love this place so much?
I just have always felt a deep affinity for that which I guess other people see no value in. And the Kerguelen Islands just always struck me as a place of such phenomenal, exceptional isolation in an order pretty much unparalleled anywhere else in the world. And I think if I can get a little bit weird on you for a second, I think I sort of draw a kind of power from that in its own way. I think I would be happy here even if no one else was here.
Well, the power of isolation. Well, I suppose that is what we signed up for when we came here. Thank you for thinking of me. That's very grip-like of you.
Honestly, it's just, this is what I love to do. So I don't feel obligated to sort of, if you look at this in your house for a while and it in any way brings bad feelings or vibes to you, feel free to just chuck it straight into the algae recycler, because I'm going to just keep making work. So don't feel for a second that you're obligated to hold on to something. But if it does bring you joy and happiness.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. It reminds me of the kinds of things that my daughter used to bring home from school back in the old place.
I'm glad. I'm really, really glad. And if you ever wanted to come around and talk more about the old times, I know we're kind of, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but always happy to chat.
And it's not good to dwell on it. This is where we are, and it's a great place. It's a great place to be.
Well,
thank you.
I'll see you soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And scene. Perfect. And so we both got to learn a little bit about your relationship together, learn a little bit more about some of your backgrounds, and see some variants on grip too. We heard grip light, grip ship, right? All sorts of stuff like that. So very, very nice. And so usually we go around and take one turn each. So Ben, since you did the conversation, how about we kind of consider that your turn in age one, just to make sure we go through the correct amount.
Yep.
So next in like my order here would be Stephen. Would you be ready to go?
Sure.
Okay, great.
So my card is going to be good luck. How we affirm our hope in happy outcomes. A spoken wish for victory that bonds us together. A particular kind of luck or fortune for the isolation. And I assign this to an aspect, right? That's how.
Yeah. Versus make a connection. So you'll connect it to an aspect and say why we have a new word for it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that since so much is tied to the success of the algae blooming, that it makes sense that our concepts and words for good luck and beneficence would be very strongly tied to the well-functioning of that system. So I'm going to put it down with the algae. It's on my screen, at least, much, much huger than the algae aspect. So it's sort of covering up that entire quarter of the board, but I'll just leave it there.
No problem. I'll make it a little tinier. So
that's better.
That sounds fantastic. So that's your connection. And what kind of word are you kind of feeling for that? Something around the algae, something to like capture that unpredictableness, that like well-wish, that like there's a good bloom, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, bloom was the first word that came to mind, but really any kind of verb, I think, that would describe some kind of biological fecundity in that sense. Maybe even like tied to water as well, because the algae is going to be growing in the water. That's the first set of thoughts I had.
And our new words also don't have to necessarily just be one word. We could like take two words that are kind of related and mash them together. It could be something based on a sound, right? Really feel free to make up any weird reason why a word might have come to replace good luck.
Do we have rain? You talked about water. Have we got a way of making sweet water, or do we rely on rain?
Fresh water. I guess rain makes a lot of sense if there's enough of it.
But then I don't know how to say. I don't know how rain could be luck. Maybe I don't know.
I don't know any others.
I'm trying to think. So like a word like quench, maybe, or in terms of what's a nice succinct word for water being really nutrient rich? Is there a good word for that? Because that feels like a thing that we as algae harvesters would always really want and desire and look for.
One thing I always associate with that is like murkiness, right? Like I always kind of feel that, or like I remember hearing a lot that like the clearer the water is, the less stuff is in it, the less likely things are to grow in it.
Murk.
Murk or brackish? Something like
Brack.
that?
Isn't brackish a mix between
salt and fresh?
Water? Yeah.
Okay.
Which maybe is exactly where the algae love to be. I don't know. Yeah. Did we just decide there is some sort of river or something? Maybe.
Muck also sounds like luck, but yeah.
Maybe the fertilizer is called muck.
Oh, I like that. Or like slurry, like we feed some sort of nutrient-rich slurry into the water to make it ready for the algae. I don't know.
But how does that become a phrase? Because like good luck is like something you wish upon someone else, right? You say like good luck for tomorrow with whatever. So is it like, I hope you have a nice slurry? Like,
what if you? So we have to feed the algae something, right? So do you like? I hope you slurry the feed.
But that just sounds like, I hope you did the dishes.
Okay, fair enough.
which like sounds passive, or maybe I'm reading.
I think brack and muck are good just because of that harsh sound. Because I was thinking like when you say break a leg, that also has the K and the G. It seems like you want those hard things that are just sort of punchy. Because it's like it's like I don't know the type of phrase it is.
Like
what if we use both? Like so like bracky muck is really invoking like I either have just one huge or I hope you win huge, whereas brack or muck is like lower order luck.
Did you say Brachymuck? Like one?
Yeah.
Brachymuck.
Brachymuck. That's good.
I like
All right, I'll make that one.
Personally, I don't know. I mean, who like
That
do
sounds
I?
great. Yeah,
am I
you're
like-
you're,
We
you're
could
the
detach
boss.
them.
It's your turn.
I think
Oh,
it's you
okay.
decide,
Yeah, then Brachymuck sounds great.
Brachymuck
Okay.
it is. All right, I will put that down next to it.
And yeah, like
As-
Daniel said, you can have one or the other, but if you really want to push it, then it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there are even other ways to like make it punchier too. Brachymuck, and so it's just like one word, right? It's like
Yeah, sure.
yeah. All right, Brachymuck. Cool. And so, what's the conversation prompt on your card?
It says when good luck is needed most.
All right.
Mm.
So, who would Esther have a conversation about when good luck is needed most with at the table?
Well, I guess none of us are actual like technicians, but as the sage, Auntie also has some. You have some kind of say, but that's more with the data kind of thing.
I think Sage is like, I know about the past.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Because now there's nothing to. You're apparently the police enforcer more than me.
Only in like a relatively narrow margin, right? Like Esther enforces sort of essentially what I interpreted as like digital customs. Like when people got
just
there,
when
it's
you
like, right.
when you arrived, I just checked you out, made sure everything was okay, made sure your ship was safely sunk and wasn't going to be resurrected.
But since then, it needs to be noted, not that our characters are aware of this, you have some sort of preternatural sort of technical know-how on
Right.
just about every polymath field possible because you've got Wikipedia in your back pocket.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
By the way, I still really like the idea of having Wikipedia when no one else has it is essentially magic,
Yeah.
which is
You are God now.
yeah, which is pretty true. Yeah. Where were you going with the scene idea?
Oh, just the idea that it was sort of maybe the new season for an algae bloom, and one of us was going out or going to assist on it.
Mhm.
Or maybe everyone assists. If it is a kibbutz type thing, maybe everyone takes their turn in assisting and doing the labor work. So maybe your card has come up to help the scientists and technicians. So you're only going to be doing like the legwork or whatever, but you still
That's a fun idea. Like you like one of you has arrived at the other person's space just to basically be like, oh, look, like we're both on the thingy duty today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I may or may not be trying to incept some ideas into you that I've checked out by reading secret Wikipedia that would actually help the scientists.
Oh, interesting.
No, that might be a bit too.
I like how you used incept as another like kind of created word
Yeah.
in it too.
Yeah. Okay.
And feel free to use passwords too, like grip if it comes up. It's not required, right? We just need to hear the brachymuck to like fulfill the requirements of the scene. But the more words we use, the more fun it is too. So
Okay.
go right
Okay, I'm going to come to your door early.
What is it?
Bonjour, auntie. C'est Esther.
Did you do this in
No.
French?
I'm not going to do it in French. No, that was just.
Nous pouvons. But that feels really rude. Yeah, let me just get the mask and the suit on. We're on the same roster, are we? Is that why you're here?
Hi, no, I'm not on today actually, auntie. I just came to wish you a brachymuck on the first day of the new seeding.
Yeah, thank you. I think this year it looks like an exceptionally tough year, so I'm very thankful for good grips like you wishing me Breckymuck.
Yeah, you can always come over if there's been any issues with the seeding or anything. You can always talk to me about it. I don't know as much as you about it or the scientists obviously, but just being just next door, you can always have a word.
That's very kind of you. Did you have any particular suggestions for this year's harvest?
Well, I'm grips with a couple of the scientists down there, and I just I hear them talking. I don't know much, but it did sound like mixing in a couple of quarts of sodium benzoate would maybe increase the yield by a couple of percentage points. But I don't know what I'm talking about. Who knows? I
I think what did I named my character anti-admin, sort of narrows his eyes and is like, yeah, that I'll relay that. That's a great suggestion. Maybe, I don't know.
Who knows? With a bit of Brack, just have good thoughts about it. You can push it out. I'm sure you can manage.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am very grateful for all this is a nice community, I'm really happy that so many people know that we can come together as a community and be supportive of each other, even if we don't know all of each other's business. So I'll refrain from asking you how you found out where sodium benzoate works on algae, but that is very interesting. I'll talk to you more about it later.
Yeah, sodium benzoate. Definitely don't try sodium benzoate. I assume. I have no idea. But those are two very different chemicals, I imagine. Probably good not to get those mixed. Would you like me to write? I can write it down. No, probably best not. Actually, you know what? Just forget that I was here. Bracky muck, and have a good one. I'll see you tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Au revoir.
I think Esther scurries away quickly.
Bracky muck. Too cute. All right, delightful. So now we know a little bit more about the tension between Esther and Auntie. So cool. Next one in my turn order is Auntie.
Oh, right. I was actually thinking of something related to what we just did. So I was gonna think of a word for a greeting. So how we greet one another, small rituals to open conversations that reflect who we are. It may differ based on who we say it to or when we say it. And prompt is meet in unexpected space. I was thinking that maybe this algae cultivation has rosters, like maybe there needs to be someone there all the time. So you have maybe 3 or 4 shifts a day. And maybe greetings are based on shifts in some sort of way. Yeah. Or like maybe you greet someone who's on the same shift as you with a different word than people who are on a different shift from you.
Oh, so you think the shifts are like permanently set? Like like the morning crew is always the morning crew, and like they have their greeting amongst themselves. Afternoon crew.
Like on a ship.
Yeah. So that like I've always wanted to try and get English or any language to like good morning should be referred for the first time you meet someone, regardless of when in the day that is. So if you meet someone at night, you say good morning because it's the first time you meet them.
It's the morning of your kind of relationship for that day.
The morning of your interactive session, yeah.
I love that one of the 2 linguists on the show has somehow figured out in a game about being a language isolate, be like, what if we could make 3 different language isolates within the same game?
No, but maybe just... or maybe Hakan's a good point. Maybe it's not good for people to always be on the night shift. So maybe it does rotate. But I don't know, something with shift and greetings. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. So it's for the change of shift. Was that one of the ideas? Like they're coming in, they're coming out. That seems like I
was thinking change or a word. What do you call it? A thingy. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the word that means a word that also means a different word? Thesaurus. Yeah, that one. Like something like change for change, and you would basically say, good change to you, sir, or whatever it would be. Because the changes in the shifts are kind of the part of the day where all of those sort of agitatory forces, where you come into contact with others and all that kind of stuff.
Or how about good on, good off?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like it. That's like it.
And what I like there is it's ripe for contraction. So you've got like good and goodif and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The Australian speaking.
And anytime if you're coming in and then if it changes to like you use it just coming in and out of rooms or something, then it's if you just you've just entered a room, you have to say one of them and the other person says the other one or something.
It's like, you know how when you say like happy travels, you want to have a good answer. You want to say like happy stay at home. Like
you too.
Like you too. I don't know. So I like that there's already a created answer. Like when if even if it's wrong, if someone said good on to you, you know you're supposed to answer good off.
Yeah.
I like the idea that there would also be some sort of vague almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you could communicate your interest or disinterest in someone with how you bargain with the greeting, right? So if I come in and I'm taking over from, say, someone's shift, or I'm just like, my shift is beginning and someone else's shift is ending, and I start with good on as the person coming off, even though it's the other person's turn to start by saying good on to me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of saying, like, I don't care very much about you. I'm more concerned with my space and what's going on for me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Way to get passive aggressiveness into it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And just to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, is this like something we only use while changing shifts, or has it like merged into the rest of the language? From that?
I was going to ask about that, because if you enter the communal space and you're neither of you are on a shift, maybe there's a third term, but I think Ben is suggesting you use good on, good off in those situations as well.
Well, what if in a situation like that, if you've both come to the communal space for some sort of like recreational time, then the accepted thing is good on and good on, because you're both sort of there to start. Like there's sort of tacit understanding that if people are sort of going to a place to engage in a thing, it's not really about shifts anymore. It's just about like whatever you're doing at that moment.
Mm.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like good on is like acknowledgement of entering, and good off is like the I am leaving kind of thing.
It's the
off
hello
of
and
shifts.
goodbye.
A little, like, or at least that's the
hello and
feeling that
goodbye.
I get. Well, but like kind of based on the shifts, but like that's kind of what the sense I got from the last line of conversation, but that might not be accurate, or like may not be what you're seeing there.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. But I'm happy with that. Yeah, sure.
Because I think that it's a cool, like, you can contract it, you could make it just like on off, you can do all sorts of weird stuff with it. So I think it'll be a rich one to play with. Cool. So good on, good off, we'll say for greeting / is it valediction? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So what's your prompt for a conversation?
Meeting in an unexpected place.
Cool. Who are you going to meet?
Yeah. So first of all, I was thinking that we can just continue the scene from before, that I've now gone to my shift, that you've wished me Bracky Muck for. And either I meet Grinshaldwald or Danny at the shift, but maybe maybe it's a bit confusing, because maybe I know we're on the same shift together, but we accidentally meet in the bathroom. So normally you say good on and good off as you're going through a particular hallway, but we meet in the bathroom, and it's a bit awkward instead. I'm assuming we don't really have necessarily gender separated bathrooms. We maybe just have a bunch of stalls.
I'd say so. Yeah, we've probably got a slightly more enlightened approach to toileting than like Western society. And
resource constraint too, I'm sure.
Yeah, building two entirely different things with urinars, like, sounds like a lot. Okay, so I don't know which one makes most sense to meet. Maybe Grinshald. My notes here include obsessed with algae.
Oh yeah.
So maybe you have a particular enthusiasm for getting on the shift. Maybe we start there.
Okay. So we're in the toilet. Am I already in the toilet and you've just walked in?
Yes, you're like at the sinks.
And we're sort of proximal to where a shift is about to start, but we would have normally met at like some sort of monitoring console, but now we're both in the toilet.
Yeah. And I open door. Oh.
Okay. And you come into the toilet, and I'm sitting on a toilet, right? But my pants aren't down. Like, I'm not using the toilet. I'm just sitting on the toilet like a chair. The stall door is open. So as you walk in, I can see you from where I'm sitting, and you can see me. And I am just sort of like absent-mindedly sort of like drumming on my thighs. Like, I'm just sort of looking into the middle distance, and I'm just like clearly not using the toilet. Like, there is no real ostensible reason for me to be in the toilet. That just happens to be where I am. I'm doing a little drumming thing, and you walk in, and like, I don't stop drumming, but you come in and you say, oh, and I'm just like, good on to you, Auntie. How are you?
Good on, Grinshald. What made you so excited this morning?
Just working with the algae, obviously. only the greatest thing going on in islands.
I agree that it's led us to a lot of great success in being in this space, but surely if we should continue our research to find maybe even greater, more efficient ways of generating energy and food.
No doubt. Yeah, I'm down with that. I am so okay with anything that happens on these islands, because if it's happening on these islands, then it was meant to happen on these islands, and I am for it. Having said that, don't see us moving completely away from algae anytime soon, considering it literally powers, fuels, and builds basically everything. So I'm just like grooving to the vibe of the algae.
That's very good of you, Rachel. You're new here, aren't you?
Relatively, yeah. I've only been here like maybe 2 years.
Well, that's not that new.
Well, sorry. So when I said that, I'm kind of assuming, stepping out of my character for a moment, that like the original cohort of people have maybe been here for like 5 or 6 years. So by their standards, I'm still very much the like interesting new thing by the sort of understood chronology of the space.
I'm thinking of a way of being skeptical towards your attachment to data anarchy, but I'm struggling with a good in for that. So maybe I won't have one.
What if while I'm drumming, right, you can see that I've got like little headphones coming from my ears, like old school wired headphones, and while I'm drumming, like a few suspiciously sounding like alerts, like message alerts, are like blipping through on my phone.
Oh my God.
Or like whatever device I've got, in my pocket. Like you don't know what it is, but it looks very out of place in this deeply data anarchistic society.
I think Andy would be like, take 2 steps away and be like, what the fuck is that? And point at your pocket.
Oh, yes. Fair response. I understand why you would be so afraid. Mm-hmm. And I take like the headphones out, which I can't actually do because then I can't hear. And I sort of slapstickily sort of like spool out this suspiciously long cord to like a really old iPod Shuffle. You remember the tiny little ones that just have like the, and I just go, look, I've just actually got on this a series of hydrophone recordings of the aquatic environment around the Kerguelen Islands, right? So right now what I'm just like rocking out to is the sound of the monarch penguins sort of feeding around the springtime, and like the incessant clackling of their beaks as they harvest anchovies from around the rocks is just, oh man, it's nothing like it. Do you want to listen? Do you want to hear it?
I know there are different opinions in our community, but I do believe that our fellow grips in the animal kingdom also have a right to privacy.
I never thought about it like that.
And this is not something we wrote in our foundations. It's not something that everyone needs to abide by, but I would like to not engage in this activity. I don't want to listen to other beings eating or doing anything else without them knowing that they're being recorded.
So I just sort of slowly retract my offered headphone, and it just like very slowly goes back into my ear, and I just kind of look at you, and I give you one of those sort of like annoying artist stares, which isn't really judgmental, but like it gives off this wafting sort of sense of like, oh, here we go again kind of thing. Like I don't roll my eyes, but you can tell I've rolled my eyes on the inside kind of thing. And I just go, look, the last thing I would want to do, Auntie, is upset you, obviously, because you're a very important member of the community who I would love to never be on the wrong side of. So whatever it is you want me to do with these bad boys, you just let me know, and I will.
No, I just it's something we hadn't. It's a schism within our community whether animals deserve privacy or not, and there are other people in the community who believe like you. So I won't force you to do something one way or another. I will, this isn't part of our rules. It's just my personal preference. So you do whatever you want, but I would just like to not take part of it. And he surprisingly walks around and sort of forgets that he was supposed to have a wee, and walks out and says, "Good on. See you in a bit."
Yeah. I'll be right out. I mean, the monarchs are basically finishing up their frenzy now anyway. So I'll just be a sec. Good on to you too.
And see, perfect. All right. So we got to learn about animal privacy rights a little bit. Daniel, do you have a card picked out for your connection?
I have. They were all so good, but I have chosen filler word. Sometimes we need to fill the air and stall for time. This unique way of gathering space to speak is particular to us. And it's a scene in which someone is left speechless. It's got to be something short, and there have to be a reason why we don't use anymore.
Can I
so
float
natural.
the idea that that in this place that we are, the wind is like sort of near ever present, right? So it's almost oppressive in its sort of windiness. What if, so nothing really controls our lives or impacts our lives more than the intensity of the physical environment that we find ourselves in. What if our filler word isn't actually a word in the traditional sense, but a mimicry or an imitation of like a whistling wind? So kind of similar to the idea of like when you're really impressed by something, you go, but we replace the whistle with more like a.
I was thinking the same sound, but for a completely different reason.
Cool.
I was thinking of like just a long S sound, because it's the most similar to white noise, so it would mask if you're being recorded. Maybe I'm paranoid.
Oh.
That's amazing.
This is who we are. I think
I picked the most paranoid character. So,
True. You just live in. You just live. Play a character, Hedvig. So you're thinking like a
go
or whatever Ben wanted.
whoosh. Give it the W. Whoosh.
go.
You want to be able to sustain it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe
you can break it up with little T's and stuff. Like if you're just like something like that.
Anything that would give a recording device trouble, basically.
Yeah.
There's something a little paradoxical about attempting to reconstruct this on while we're all recording.
Fricatives are awesome.
The next.
Yeah. My bad, everyone. Sorry.
No, I like it though.
Yeah, so like a whooshing sound is what we
Whooshing sound.
landed on. Cool. So, and I will tie that to the Anarchy. It's like half Anarchy, half islands themselves. Why don't I just put on the island since we don't have one there, but it's clearly influenced by both, I think, right? Like the whooshing sound kind of like maybe that like spoke to us of the wind because of how much it interfered with recording devices, stuff like that. So that's perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really hard to record someone like sort of surreptitiously when there is an ever-present wind all of the time.
Yep. Perfect.
That's good.
All right. And who is Danny going to be having a conversation with that will leave someone speechless?
I feel like Danny's going to I'm going to go visit Esther.
Cool. The all-knowing Esther.
Yep.
Very nice. In Esther's shelter?
Let's see. I found Esther outside. It's not very common for us to be outside, but we're both finding ourselves there. Okay. Esther, good on.
Oh, good on, Danny. Surprised to see you here.
Well, same as well. I mean, it's a cold one, isn't it?
Yeah. I can barely hear you over the sound of the wind. Come a little closer, Grip.
I was thinking about something, and I thought I would bring it to you.
Sure.
Has it ever occurred to you that we came here to get away from surveillance, and yet I don't really know how to say this. The nature of our community has put us under a good deal of surveillance ourselves. Seems like a lot of us are hiding something. We came to escape the watchful eye, but here we are being watched. Do you get that sense?
No, not really. Sorry, I said I should have said shh. By someone in particular, Danny, or do you mean by the island itself?
Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Maybe the sense of isolation means that when you feel somebody is watching you, you notice it. Is that what you mean?
Well, that's true enough. It does seem as though the island itself is always just on the cusp of saying something, but it never quite enunciates. But other than that, I'm a bit lost for words, really. I
don't think that's what I mean.
Okay.
I don't think it's just the island. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I don't. She shakes her head.
Well, it could just be my imagination. Anyway, I don't mean to imply too much. You've always been a good gripper.
You too, Danny. You know, isolated environments often, give people cause to have more feelings of paranoia. If it was anyone else, Danny, I would counsel them to go talk to you. It can be a bit troubling.
Yes, well, what do you do when you're the healer? How do you get healed? I suppose I try to draw my strength from the grips around me. Anyway, thanks so much for the chat. Good off.
Good off, Danny. Good off.
All right, and scene. Very nice. A little bit more.
That was nerve-wracking.
So good.
All right, fantastic. And so now we've all gone around once. So we'll move on to age 2. And so to move on to age 2, so every backdrop has 2 ways in which the story can go based on the pathway. So when transitioning from age to age, something major will happen to the community that kind of brings it to the next step. When you're going into age 2, the kind of overall prompt for what's going on is an event to foreshadow the end of the isolation. It finds its way into all conversation and is impossible to ignore. And then there are 2 pathways. Each of them has another paragraph that explains a little bit more specifically something that's happening to the compound. And so we'll follow each of those as we go from age 1 to age 2 to age 3, and they'll define kind of the large scale of what happens to the compound. The 2 choices we have, and so we'll pick one of these. How we interpret this will very much be up to us, but they kind of give you an outline of what happens to your story. Is either we let in more outsiders because something about the community starts to fail, or the other one is we get caught up in basically a global conflict in some way. And so we are now not allowed to be isolated anymore, and eventually, because of our end up as collateral damage in this kind of global conflict. I'll read both paragraphs, and then we can pick which one that we think would be more interesting for our story to follow. The first paragraph is, we had no choice. The compound would have collapsed without their help. We let an outsider in. We thought we could control it, but they had the ear of someone important. Why some suggested we should bring in more. And the second one, the outside world has changed. It was dangerous before, but looks to be far worse now. We smell ash in the air and hear planes overhead. There are whispers that war is brewing. How do we pull further into our isolation? So, either war, conflict, or we let in an outsider. Both these will lead in some way to the destruction of our community. Either as a community itself or the physical destruction. So what do we think? We picked this kind of together as to which one we think fits better with our story as we've told it so far. Does anyone have strong feelings?
One thing that jumped out to me straight away about the second option is, rather than some kind of global conflict as such, I could see what we consider to be our sort of sovereign waters to be invaded by corporate interests looking to extract mineral, like, if we started in 2030 and as the time's going on, right, and oil crisis really starts to ramp up, oil companies will look to extract whatever oil is out there, including previously not very fertile fields, but we might be sitting on a pretty substantial reserve that people want to extract, but we lack any kind of resources to ward off or to prevent that extraction on the part of like massive multinational corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the phrase that I thought of in connection with part two, the second option was, they won't leave us alone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that sounds fair. So we interpret the war kind of more metaphorically in terms of the war for dwindling resources on Earth, right? Is kind of what I'm hearing, which I think we can definitely work with. So how does that sound to folks? So ships are coming closer and closer. We don't have the ability to ward them off.
We're seeing rigs on the horizon sort of bedding down. We're seeing helicopters and planes that service them, that sort of thing.
I think that could be interesting. Does that sound fun to everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's try that. So now as we're going from... okay, so read the next step of our pathway. Next, we're going to move the aspects now from age 1 into age 2. But while we're doing that, one of them is going to change slightly based on what's happening to the community, right? So one of them is going to be left behind in age 1 and morph in some way. So what do we think? We have the Dead Anarchy, we have the Kerguelen Islands, and we have algae everywhere. Which one of these do we think will shift a little bit?
Surely all the rigs are fucking with the algae, which is awful.
Yeah.
But it seems like the most
good.
Yeah, it's an extant threat to our continued existence.
Fair. All right. So does that sound right to everyone?
Yeah, it was the first thing I thought. So.
All right. Let's do that. So, what do we think? Do you think this is like sickly, like dwindling algae, dwindling supplies? Like what? How do we think we could summarize kind of what's going on with the algae here?
Yeah,
tainted waters. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, are they all dying, or is it like a slow, gradual process?
I was envisioning sort of a bit more of a gradual thing. Like there wasn't like one huge oil spill, but our yields sort of year on year, no matter what we try, no matter what amazing information Esther manages to pull from her back pocket, just can't continue. Like we are seeing a drop year on year, and we just can't help it or explain it really. Like we don't even know for sure, but we're like, well, fuck, it started doing this pretty much when they showed up, and it's not stopping, and we can't seem to figure out why.
Yeah, so let's see.
The best suggestion is some kind of resource displacement as well. Esther's guessing, obviously, but so the places where the oil rigs are now has pushed out whatever wildlife or even plant life was there. That's been pushed like one step closer to the shore, which pushes something else one step closer, so that the stuff which the algae was using in the water is getting sort of taken away. Like it's all linked. There's all a chain.
Competition that wasn't there before, but now is.
Exclusion.
Yeah. So how?
If I had to come up with a name for it,
how about just tainted water supply, maybe, or not water supply, I guess as such in terms of drinking water, but like
tainted waters.
Yeah, tainted water.
Algae under threat.
Yeah. Tainted water says algae under threats. Yeah.
That's, by the way, the name of the one-person punk band that Grindelwald has started on the island. It plays every Friday afternoon. Right. You can be sure in the communal space to catch Tainted Waters ripping out a wicked one-person punk riff.
Yeah, what is the phrase that people use that's so terrible? At least we'll get great art out of it, right? I would guess Grinchel will probably make at least great art out of this tragedy. Okay.
My rage, my ineffectual rage is all just tainted water on stage.
Perfect. All right, and last thing we do when we're switching from turn to turn is everyone discards optionally one of their cards, and I'll give you cards from age 2 now, which is kind of a slightly different supply than age 1. Ben, since you didn't use one of your cards because it was mine, go ahead and discard 2, and I'll give you 2 cards from age 2.
I can do that.
Just move them out to the table, and I'll delete them.
So, Danny, what do you think of playing role-playing games so far?
Oh, it's lots of fun. I'm surprised at how easy it is to build scenes. But I was a theater nerd in high school and uni, so making up scenes and acting them out has always been fun for me. So yeah, I'm having a good time.
Good.
I'm amazed that this is the first time you've ever found yourself in a role-playing game.
Oh yeah, well, I was busy otherwise.
Seems like the sort of thing that like oh no, I guess like there was probably a vague moral panic around role-playing games in like religious communities and that sort of thing, wasn't there?
There was.
Yeah.
It's that it has dice, and dice have 6, and 6 is the number of the beast.
Yeah, maybe.
I was aware.
Don't know if you know of Daniel's Mormon past. I was thinking about that actually as we were going through the prompt for the compound.
And it wasn't even the Mormon thing. There was a lot of moral panic just in middle class circles.
That is true.
Generally.
Actually, I was listening to a podcast on it the other day. It was definitely not just like wacky religious folk. Like there was a real middle America Dungeons and Dragons is turning our kids into like murderers and suicidal maniacs and stuff.
Yeah, there was the novel and then the TV adaptation of the novel Mazes and Monsters.
With a very, very early Tom Hanks.
Really?
What? What did he play?
He was the main character in Mazes and Monsters.
Was he the
Monsters
kid?
and Mazes.
No idea.
Oh
He's the
my
kid.
gosh.
Like tries to throw himself off the top of the World Trade Center because he's like lost himself in the game.
That's right. Spoiler.
Oh, God.
But
It was a 4 TV movie, if that's from like 1978 or something. Like it's pretty.
Right.
Mazes and Monsters. That's so funny.
But he was a child, right? And all the art I'm seeing from it, he looks like a grown Tom Hanks.
Yes.
Twenty 26 years old, it says.
Okay.
So college student, because that's kind of where Dungeons and Dragons got its like, that was its nascent sort of like fertile ground. But it, from what I've seen of it, and I haven't seen the whole film, it is to D&D what like Hackers, the mid-90s films, was to like actual hacking. Like it's just so ridiculously off the target.
Wow. He looks like a proper sort of, what's the expression, Chad in some of these images.
Wow. Cool. All right, great.
Okay.
All right, so on to age 2. So we now have Tainted Waters, Algae Under Threat is our new aspect. We know how the story is changing slightly because this threat, and remember the prompt we had is an event to foreshadow the end of the isolation and find its way into all conversation that's impossible to ignore. So these encroaching kind of tankards rigs are a big deal to us, right? Like they're fundamentally threatening what we're trying to do here, either if it's because of our attachment to the algae, our attachment to the location, or our attachment to data privacy, right? Like all of those are directly under threat because of what's happening. Cool. So we'll get started with the next age. So in this phase and in age 3 as well, you'll see some cards that instead of a concept will actually say action on them. And those on the card itself will explain what they do. Usually they will have repurposed an existing word. They might do something with one of the words that are already on the table. They might change the turn structure in some other way instead of doing the normal make a connection, build word, have a conversation. But each of those should be spelled out exactly on the card what they do. So if you don't have any of those, don't worry about it. But if you do, just read what it says on the card. If it's still confusing after that, let me know and we can clarify what that should mean. But cool. So Ben, I think you were first in turn order. Let's go with you. You know which card you're going to play?
I do, and it is exactly the type of card you just mentioned. So I'm going to play an evolve card. Sorry, I've lost my glasses. So as pressure builds, we change in ways big and small. As we change, so does our language. Make a connection, play on an aspect in the current age, and choose a word from a previous age. Now the word so the new aspect, and explain how the world has changed meaning. Okay, cool. I think I know how to do this.
Mhm.
So the word that we're taking from the previous age is going to be brachymuck, right? But we're moving it from its algae aspect, if I've got the right of this card, over to the Kerguelen's Islands isolation aspect. So basically, brachymuck used to mean like good luck or good fortune, and now it's basically come to mean like this looming presence, or like the ill omen on the horizon. You know, like our algae is failing, and everyone knows it. And so brachymuck is just kind of this concept. Some people use it to mean the actual unseen thing that is affecting our algae, but a lot of people are just kind of referring to this oncoming change that we all see happening as just a broader sort of brachymuck.
And why did we pick brachymuck? Like, why did that word in particular end up being the thing that signified this incoming demise?
I think because we, as a group, brachymuck as a word for that sort of good luck or good fortune had really come to symbolize the sort of the apex of our utopic sort of fervor, like when the community was at its strongest and everyone was getting on it at best, and the algae works were just churning out all sorts of things. Brachymuck as a word had just kind of come to exemplify our community at its best. And so when these rigs started to show up and planes started to be there, and maybe even on some of the outlying islands, like actual small supply depots have been set up with actual infrastructure on some of what we consider to be our islands, brachymuck, like as our idealism sort of crashed upon the rocks, so too did the symbolic representation of that idealism have to also kind of shatter. And so that shattering looks like being turned from a word of goodness into a word of like impending doomness.
Yeah, so brachymuck, I think as I'm hearing you, rather than being something that we wish good luck, was more like a restatement of who we were, and like a statement of our idealism in terms of like what the community was founded on. And as this threat came, the meaning of that changed from an optimistic one to a impending doom feeling.
And
Is
that
that
might
accurate,
be a generational thing. Like maybe it's been long enough for a younger generation sort of to be sort of like teenagers now. Maybe the kids who were first brought to the island when they were like in their 5s and 10s are now all like 18, 19, 20. And so in true sort of teenage style, the words that mean cool for our parents do not mean cool. And the words that mean bad have come to mean good, and all that kind of stuff.
Is it also the kids make fun of it because it is a new word that the community created that was attached to the ideology that they now see as passé?
Yes, I'd say that's absolutely tied into it. And also maybe the kids are just a bit more cynical, right? So far from being the first generation of like homegrown sort of data anarcha zealots, they're actually a little bit like all kids are just kind of like, whatever, man, this is home sucks. Like it's normal and thus very boring and, like you said, passé.
Perfect. All right, let's see it. So what's the prompt?
Okay, so I have to choose someone to have a conversation with now, don't I? I'm going to pick Esther, simply because Grindelwald hasn't had a conversation with Esther yet, I don't think. And Grindelwald has, for the last indeterminate period of time, let's say years, kind of stuck to her guns when it comes to believing that the Kerguelen Islands themselves are the key to our power, more so than the data anarchy, and more so even than the algae as our central linchpin. So she's kind of got almost a kind of annoying and borderline dismissive attitude when it comes to people's concerns and fears around our dwindling capacity to manufacture algae products and what these sort of newer things on the horizon like sort of mean for the community, because she has absolute faith that the Kerguelen Islands themselves are kind of guardians of this place. And so that's kind of where Grindelwald is at as a character. And she is currently, I don't know, something that we haven't done before. Maybe she's...
we haven't used the common spaces.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe she's sort of wanting to put herself up for some sort of position of significance, not necessarily like the mayor of the town or anything, but just sort of like maybe an elected representative to act as a go-between for the people on the horizon. And so she's in the communal space preparing for her talk, like maybe running through some talking points on like flashcards or whatever. And maybe Esther, sort of before the meeting takes place, comes in or something. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Sorry, Stephen.
No, I'll come in and notice you setting up and say, well, good on Grinchell.
Esther, good on to you. You're a bit early, but I'm really glad you've come.
No, I heard what was going on. I couldn't miss the opportunity to see one of my oldest scripts make the transition from punk artist to political hopeful. This is the same stage, isn't it, where you first debuted Tainted Waters?
I sort of run my hands over a particular stain on the carpet of the stage, like sort of lovingly. And I was like, yep, this is where I spat out 2 of my teeth from headbanging too intensely. And I grin when I say that, and like the 2 teeth that are missing, sort of, they're actually molars. So I hit really hard at like a glancing blow, and I kind of tongue the hole where the molars were, sort of lovingly. And I'm like, God, we've all just been through so much, you know, like it's been such a ride. And I'm so glad to hear that you still consider me such a close grip to you. I'm hoping that even though everyone's sort of, you know, they're so caught up in the brachymuck that's coming, you know, there's so much fear. And I'm really hoping that today I can just sort of, I can put a bit of an interrupt between that fear and some of our people. You know what I mean?
I think so. I noticed that you initially floated a slogan, "No brachymuck," but then you changed that. I mean, it strikes me that, I mean, I'm one of the old guard. I still take brachymuck to be a positive word. I mean, you know, it's what keeps our algae flowing, but you seem to, you don't want to take ownership of brachymuck anymore. Why to you and yours does that now connote something negative?
Well, I mean, I think we probably came out here, well, I think a lot of people came out here thinking that they could create something new, but we did that, you know, we made something new, and for the longest time there, you know, like the brachymuck spirit of us all seemed to just kind of be this uniting force. But I guess I kind of think that perhaps a lot of us, you know, to a certain degree, probably me included, maybe we were living in a little bit of a fantasy land, thinking that we were immune to change. And, you know, I think the reason I want to sort of take a step back from brachymuck is not so much to take a shit on what it meant to us as a people, but to acknowledge that was our time. and we're moving into a new time, and Bracky Muck is part of that old time. You know, it feels a little bit like flogging the horse after it's bolted the stable. Look, and I furiously scribble on my little flashcard because that was clearly like a talking point I was going to try, and it just doesn't work. So I'm like, oh no, I got to something better than that. Something better than that.
Well, I would wish you Bracky Muck, but it sounds like that's no longer the order of the day anymore. I do hope that this plays well for you. I've got a feeling that you see things as they really are. I mean, I consider myself one of the old guard. I still struggle to keep up my lingo with the times, but I'm also a realist. I think you're probably better than Antti, your only opponent for the position. I've never quite got on with him. So I don't mention this, but I'll be... you can count on one vote at least.
Does that sound okay to you, Antti? We kind of
it's okay.
said something about you. Okay.
That's fine. It's just very funny. It's very Steve to do this.
My husband can say whatever he wants.
I think it's very funny. Yeah.
So I don't really say anything, and I sort of put my hand out in what has come to be sort of one of our community's like strongest signs of solidarity. And it's not a handshake, but it's like we do like the monkey grip on each other's sort of wrists like that. And that's kind of like a physical manifestation of true gripship between us. And I don't even really need to say anything. It's just like it's understood that I consider Esther to be one of my sort of, not necessarily like my super BFF, but someone for whom I have just immense respect and goodwill towards, all in a gesture.
Wow.
All right. Sounds like end scene. Your tightest grip in some way. All right. Fantastic. And so what I think we'll likely do, just to make sure that we, and I can say a little past when I initially said, I think, but probably if we do 3 turns rather than 4 in H2 and H3, that'll help us wrap up in time, and usually is a fine variant that I do just to make sure that we stick to time. But cool. So we did the first in H2, and so now we'll go to the second one. And who was second in turn order? Last time we did.
I think it was me.
Steven? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So there has been a discovery. Something new is discovered, a geographic feature, a piece of technology, or something about ourselves which was previously unknown. Name this new discovery. So I'm going to put this under tainted waters and say it is something that enables the algae at least to remain at a sort of sustainable level for now. It can't counteract the negative forces, but it does sort of slightly delay the sort of the impending Bracky Muck. And obviously it's something that a bit of experiment by the scientists with some input from Esther has managed to synthesize. So we need a name for it. Some kind of, and I think it's some kind of synthetic name. It doesn't have to be super long, but it could be something, a shortened form of something long, something scientific sounding.
Have you told the scientists that you're just a scientist and that's why you come with such valuable information? Or are they onto you?
I mean, I think, good question.
Yeah.
I mean, if she's managed to stay secret this long, then she's just done it by being very, very good at withholding certain information and only coming out when it's really, really important.
Okay.
What a curse for Esther, right? To protect her identity, she would have to have on many occasions allowed shitty things to transpire, knowing that she could have helped or improved in some way.
Yeah, it's a real arc. That's why she looks so haggard now.
What a weight on her little shoulders.
And this is the one where she's sort of come out of retirement. It's been about 5 or 6 years since she's even opened the device, but because this was such a doom that was upon us, she had to look and see if she could help synthesize something. So
what was the there was some chemical you had mentioned earlier was wondering.
Sodium benzoate.
Sodium benzoate.
Benzoate, yeah.
Yeah, I immediately went to that as like being maybe a basis for a word or something. But
So I mean, yeah, I do like the phoneme thwaite. Is that a phoneme or what is that?
Thwaite?
Thwaite.
Thwaite? I don't know.
Although if we're French, we won't be able to pronounce the th, right?
No.
Wait.
I think it might be a morpheme. But I don't know what it is.
How about it could be something she could try and assign it to some fictional person, call it like Thwaite's Booster or Thwaite's Cure or something like that. It could be.
What about well, hang on. If you're like kind of the semi-saving grace here, what if we call it like Forte something or something Forte?
Yeah, that's very dangerous. Maybe this is the point actually at which she reveals she's like she overplays her hand because it's so dangerous. She overplays it. Turns out she had this thing. And so at this point, it turns out that it actually was her that came up with it. And that's the reason why they named it after her. I don't know. What do you think? And yeah, Fort or Forte, because it does mean strong or whatever. And it makes the algae a bit stronger.
Forte solution, meaning both like the liquid and the fix.
Forte solve. Forte
yeah,
solution.
and maybe shorten that to Forte Sol or something.
Forte Sol. There you go.
Fortisol. There we go. That's it. There we go.
Perfect.
That's the money shot.
And what do you think happens with the knowledge that you had this device? Is there like any
Back to the new president, whoever won the vote.
Yeah.
Esther just sort of
I don't know who
leaves
won.
herself open to the authorities.
Well, let's see. What was the conversation prompt on that one? Did you move
I've
it
lost
into
the
table?
card now.
Let's see.
Sorry.
It was discovered here. I have it here. Hope in an unexpected place. So this could either be about the Fortisol or about something else.
About the fact that Grinchald won the election when you didn't think she would. Because I think that Auntie might be like ideologically quite radical in a lot of, like, we already know that he thinks that animals have a right to privacy. Most people in the community don't think that. And I think if he heard that like you had a device with Wikipedia on it, but it wasn't attached to the internet, I think he would still see that as like really dangerous, reckless behavior. Whereas some parts of the community are like, well, it's not connected to the internet. It's not a problem. So I think he's gone more and more extreme in his old age. And this is a bit on. And I think maybe despite everyone's predictions, he lost the election. So maybe that's where he found hope in an unexpected place.
So the hope that I would be able to reveal the information was found in the unexpected place of Auntie losing the election. Is that?
Yeah, that you're not as much in danger of being like ostracized.
Right.
Okay. I like that. That works.
Should we have, we can have a conversation after your concession speech, or which way?
I don't know.
Does it have to be?
It doesn't need to be me.
I was going to say, does it have to be me that does the conversation with one other person, or can it be any pair?
It can be any pair. So it doesn't need to be you by the strict rules. Usually the person whose turn it is does end up being in it, but if there's a really good reason for you not to be in it, or there's another really interesting scene, then we can waive that rule.
Yeah, you can tell me if this isn't right, but for me, the interesting scene is the debate or the conversation over whether to use Fortisol, given that you're still against it, given where the source of the information came from, but Grinch is pro using it.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Does that sound okay with everybody?
Maybe that's the final debate.
Oh my God, are we engaging in a political debate on stage right now?
I don't know.
It doesn't have to be that, but me personally, I would enjoy that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I am here to entertain and lead and support.
Sorry, is that your slogans?
That was just the final bit of one of my talking points, and now it's over to you.
The way we've always done it has always worked. We stand firm in our foundations, and if the algae are failing, we shall find another source.
But what other source, Auntie? What? I like everyone else in this audience, I see a room full of faces who asked the same question. If not this solution, what solution? What solution meets your criteria for acceptability?
We should never put all of our eggs in one basket. We can't just put all of our face into this algae. We should broaden our horizon. We should invest in geothermal energy. We're on a volcanic island, for crying out loud. We can find other things. We should look at things we can grow on land. We shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket. And fixing this will just continue our dependence on this one source.
No one here, I think, would be trying to say we should only ever think to algae. But at the same time, tapping into geothermal energy is an enterprise that is going to require resources and technology and a time frame that we simply don't have. We don't look to algae for some sort of fetishistic reason because it's sitting on a pedestal in my living room. Side note, there is a pedestal in my living room made of algae that I worship all the time, but that's not for reasons like I'm not stupid, and I don't think anyone here is stupid. But if we look at what is possible right now and where we could be spending our time and energy, we have in our hands, because of Esther, a workable solution right now. And you sound like you're saying, instead of doing that, we should instead funnel all of our time and all of our energy into pie in the sky projects that could potentially take years and resources we don't possess to pay off.
We all came here with one purpose in mind. We have a shared ideology and a shared faith in a sense. And the way by which Esther achieved this solution goes against the very foundations of why we're here. And if we go down that path and don't develop knowledge of our own, but derive knowledge from other people, we will cease to exist as a community in a meaningful way. We will abandon the very point of why we're here. And
I think we're stronger than that. I think our community, after all these years together, is able to withstand some ingress from the outside world without it poisoning the well in the way that you seem to fear it will. I believe that we are stronger and better, and that we are enough of a community to never lose sight of the grip ship that we all share together. And it is us who listen to the wailing of the wind. And don't be afraid, but turn towards it. We face the wind. And this is just the Fortisol now is today's wind. And tomorrow will be a different wind. And the day after that will be a different wind. And as a community, we'll face all of the winds.
I think this is a path maybe to our continued survival, but the dissolvement of our community. I think a vote for you is a vote against our discrete community in a meaningful way. And we have to call it at some point, because I know Ben and me can both.
So at this point, does Auntie just sort of like bend the gooseneck microphone away and just kind of signal clearly that he has
very grumpy
little
old man. He's gonna just like, well, I'm done now, and like walk off stage. And
okay,
yeah.
Be grumpy off stage.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, delightful. And we know what happens after this, and it's that Grinchel Wald wins the election. So a new step forward for the community. All right, and
Auntie, I want you to know that I take no personal pleasure in this. It was never a contest between you and me, but just a set of visions for what was best for our community.
A set of deeply held ideologies that define us as people. But
sucked in, I won.
Perfect. All right, wonderful. So the last turn of H2, and I think Hedvig, you were third in turn order, right?
Oh, yeah. But if Daniel had a card he really wants to play, or
there is one, and it's faction. Maybe this is implied already. A group emerges within the isolation with a strong opinion on how things need to change. Name them.
that sounds
Wow.
like
A disagreement made public. That's the prompt.
That sounds great.
that feels like we've almost done half.
Yeah, I think so. I think we kind of,
Or
So what's yours?
We didn't give it a name though, but yeah.
No,
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. I feel like this is a perfect synergy rather than doubling up.
Mhm.
Okay. It propels the story on.
Mhm. So which aspect would you play that on then to kind of capture that? I guess would be on Teacher Waters probably.
I liked Grinch's evocation of the wind, and that was obviously inspired by Grinch's love of the islands. So if it's going to be something, if the faction, if I understood it right, is going to be the faction that's standing behind Grinch, it could also be something associated with the islands and even specifically with the wind.
And it also is the Dead Anarchy too.
I like to place this on the island because this is something that I've come to peace with. It was the hardest thing for me. It was the source of pain, and now I've turned it into something I love.
Very nice.
Oh, can I make a suggestion?
Always.
In Grindelwald's very first conversation with Danny alluded to a daughter
I got it.
used to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And I'm having this conversation with anti-admin.
Oh, so this is still the formation of the fraction.
We're seeing a disagreement made public.
Oh, okay. By the way, I feel like I should say for the record that like I intentionally usually play people who are very different from myself.
Whatever, grumpers
You're all about the online marketing tracking or
My brother
I run
is.
an
I'm
ad tech
not.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to reveal the name of this faction, like in the scene, Daniel? Or do we want to name it beforehand? Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. So we'll bend the rules slightly for dramatic effect.
I think. Oh, where do you want to have this scene?
It's after the election. You've come to me because I'm the healer.
Oh,
Ooh.
I have.
Way to eat some crow there.
I don't know what that means.
Eating crow is like humble pie. Like you are a grumpy man,
not-
so to avail yourself of a healer is.
You're
Yeah.
stung. You're stung by your defeat.
Would Andy go to a healer for that?
In a rare move, he might.
Maybe he might.
It's up to you though, Hedvig. So.
I'm trying to think of what's another. I don't think Andy thinks you can talk about problems. You can like.
What if Danny goes to Auntie instead of the other way around? So
That could be
Auntie's-
it. Yeah.
I'll do it. Okay. Auntie, good on to you.
Good on. How you doing?
I know how you must be feeling after this. This hasn't been easy.
Do you?
I believe I do. And the reason I say that is that I share your vision, and yet it may be a vision that is past.
I think it is past if we believe it. It's past, and it's not if we hold on to it. I think it's something we can do something about, and I believe that giving in to convenience and quick solutions is the way we'll lose it.
I believe you. And I've come to believe even more in our vision. Ever since the Horizoniers arrived with their ships and their supplies impinging on us, I felt something. I felt the pull of the outside world that I vowed never to return to. I've never shown anyone this. You remember how the disappearances started when they started tracking us? Well,
yes.
I think I can infer what he means. Like before we came to the island.
before we came to the island, and people, well, there were many, I don't need to tell you how many were lost. And that was what spurred our decision to remove ourselves. This is something I kept, and I never let it slip. This was given to me by, once I had a daughter, and she was among them. And I look at this, and I remember my determination never to return to the old ways. to stay with ourselves as grips and avoid the society that would track us and all that bracky muck. I feel as powerless as you do, and I don't know what to do.
Well, maybe this is the way it goes. Maybe we need to go somewhere else, somewhere even more isolated. Maybe we shouldn't impinge our ideas on other people, but take those who want and go to yet another place, or throw them out and say that if they want to live this life of convenience and abundance and security, they can go do that offshore.
This is hard. All I know is that I'm not going back. Despite the scarcity, I'm not going back to the old place. This place is me now.
And did you want to call Steve?
How did I go?
I think you went well. I need.
Do we need the name of the faction?
Yes.
Horizoniers, right?
Horizoniers.
Right. So that's the people who are coming from the rigs and that sort of thing.
Ah, okay.
But also the people who are allied. The people who are allied, sort of with this new way.
Okay. Horizoniers, I like that.
Perfect. All right. And we put down the islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
This is a prop that my daughter, who still hasn't gone to bed, slipped under the door, so I decided to work it in.
Very cute.
All right. So entering H3, the prompt is, what was foreshadowed has now come to pass. The end of the isolation is near. There is no escaping it. And so the paragraph that usually would go along the kind of pathway we've chosen all reads, but since we're interpreting it a little broadly, we'll kind of decide what it means for our story in particular. The fight has come to us. When the smoke and rubble were cleared, the final count was 10. An explosion shook the compound in the cool of the day, taking 10 innocent lives in its wake. Our walls are now breached. Most rally and try to repair, but there are whispers that some are considering the unthinkable, leaving. Who tries to stop them? So we'll see. We'll interpret that broadly and see what that means for us in particular. I think we could interpret that as being, since the war, we were interpreting as the encroachments of these vessels and the tainting of our water supply, or the tainting of our algae supply. We'll have to decide how that plays with the Fortizol in particular, right?
Maybe it failed. Maybe it exploded.
Well, I was actually going to float the idea that it did explode, but in a way that it was clear that someone made that happen, right? And so there's rumors that either it was outside corporate interests, which means someone in our community communicated to them and were like, by the way, if you hit this strategic dump, you were going to sink the community, or someone from the community has deliberately sabotaged it in order to sink the community. And we as a community don't know which of those two options it is.
Or not in order to sink the community, but keep the community on the right path.
Wow. I wonder who it could have been.
Maybe that's too dark.
No, that's exactly the kind of scummy human behavior that humans are so good at.
What do you think, babe? Or first, do we need to establish these things, right? Okay. What do you think, babe?
Well, it wasn't me, because I was heavily invested in the success of the Fortizol. 10% of me suspects Anti, but 90% the oil corporates. I'm still invested in the isolation, and I'm still suspicious of the outside world. And Esther doesn't seriously believe that Anti would go to those lengths, nor would he would be able to at the age of whatever he is now.
75. I don't know.
Yeah.
75 on an Antarctic island, which is like 95 in normal places.
Antarctic island, yours. And I think that this is also possibly something we that could really be a mystery for all of us, right? We all have our
That's
different
what
answers.
I was thinking. Like it's never going to be clear whether someone tipped off the oil companies or someone sabotaged the dump, and that kernel of doubt is the real thing that might end up sort of sinking the community.
Yeah, but we really did have 10 people die in that case. Like that part of the thing will take literally, it sounds like. So some people did pass. Okay, great. Cool. So the one thing we do now is as we move from age to age, we'll also change one of the aspects slightly. So which one of these are we going to leave behind? The islands, the tainted waters, or the Den Anarchy? Which one of those is going to morph slightly?
I mean, it seems obvious that the tainted waters, like our supply of thing that was helping us keep that sort of algae system ticking along, is literally up in smoke now. So surely our algae production similarly is just basically kaput.
Oh, tainted waters doesn't mean that tainted waters goes away and algae flourishes. It just means that the algae goes away entirely.
Well, because the cortisol is the substance that got like sort of immolated, right? And the cortisol was the substance that was allowing us to kind of limp our algae production along at its sort of excellent level. So without it, I think our algae production just continued its inevitable decline into nothingness.
Okay.
Yeah, so dwindling algae supply.
Is now none.
Yeah, dwindling / none. All right, fantastic. And lastly, everyone can now discard a card, and I will give you an H3 card. And I think, Hedvig, you didn't get a turn last time, so we'll start with you, and then we'll go Ben, Stephen to move into the epilogue. So after we do this, after H3, basically what happens is we all do one final narrated scene with the legacy deck, where we just kind of like wrap up our stories, so don't feel like you have to wrap up everything within this age. This was the only point I'm trying to make. But we're going to play 3 more cards, and then that'll signal kind of the epilogue phase of the game.
Oh, okay. I have one that builds on the previous things, but I think we've mined that. I think I'm going to play disuse, a word which was once common is gradually forgotten. Perhaps the reason we spoke about it has faded away, or we've intentionally left it behind. So I think that people have stopped using our greetings because we're no longer have shifts for the algae production.
Oh, perfect.
And so I want to connect it to, well, what do I connect it to in that case, I guess?
Does it say on the thing, does it say like play it on a word?
Make a connection, pick a previously defined word. Oh yeah, pick a previously defined word, fine. Explain why we no longer use the word. Skip to build a word phase in the conversation, explore the disuse, finally tear up the word. New conventions. Yeah. So I think that most people have stopped using the word, but some people haven't. So I think the scene is just Antti walking around the island saying good on to everyone he meets and being replied with hello.
Or like, rebuffed with a polite non-good on greeting. I love it.
Yeah. And I like that as a montage. I don't know. I don't really have a conversation to play out there. I just like the montage of like, get him getting grumpier and grumpier and more like riled up throughout the day.
You are painting
like
such a wonderful like mental film picture for me right now of just this like epic one take with everyone organized in such a way so that they like walk into screen and like, hey Auntie, good on. Hi Auntie, good on.
Yeah, it's like that. He goes to get breakfast in the morning and says good on to the people in the canteen, and they're like, oh, good morning, hello. And he's like, people these days. And yeah, I like that. And I think, I don't think there's a good scene for that. I think it's better to keep it as that.
No, that's a great scene for that. It makes fantastic. Me like I was Auntie's rival, and I just feel such an outpouring of pity for this old believer who just will not let go of what is a fundamentally very hopeful sort of space.
Yeah, come around to each of us, and then you come to me.
Good on, Danny.
And I say nothing. What do you want me to say, Anti?
The custom is to say good on or good off, depending on your activity of the day. I don't know why this is so hard. People all day have been. It's not a difficult convention. Don't know why it's so hard.
And then I put a hand on your shoulder, and I say, "Good on."
Thank you. Finally.
Oh, delightful.
Hurts. It hurts.
All right. So our second, I think, was Ben in order, right?
Me? Did you say? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, for in the turn order for playing a card.
Okay, so I've got symbol of hope. Well, I'll drag it onto the board. That's a good idea. We see a beam of hope when things are most dire. We turn to this. And so I was thinking, I'm super open for suggestions, but for the sake of brevity, I was thinking that the phrase, or something like the phrase, still wind or quiet wind, or basically something that denotes the wind has stopped, however briefly, which just allows everyone a moment to breathe and to think. And so it's sort of come into usage recently because there's been so much change and so much upheaval. And most sort of presently, everyone, for just a moment after the explosion, which sort of rocked our community, the force of that concussive force for just a moment sort of like pushed all the wind quiet for just a moment. And so now as like a reappropriating, the community is kind of using still wind to mean sort of change, but also renewal and maybe something new and something different.
Very nice, very nice. And so you tied that to the islands then, in that case, it sounds like?
Yes, because we've left the algae behind. So yeah, I would. I'd tie it to the islands. And I'm just trying to figure out who I would talk to about this. Maybe instead of talking to someone, perhaps I am sort of sitting sort of at the foot of one of the glaciers of the main sort of mountain of our main island. And I've found just like a perfect spot where these sort of katabatic winds that like fall down the glacier, they sort of create like a tumbling motion. And if you sit in this particular spot sort of semi-regularly, but at an interval that you can't predict, the wind just stops dead for just a moment, just for a couple of seconds before it kind of like again. And so I'm just sitting there sort of in this meditation as I reflect on my time on the islands and everything that it's meant to me. And sort of the picture that you would see is of just like this sort of fairly older sort of artistic woman sitting cross-legged on some ice and sitting very still and very serene, despite the fact that her body is just like assaulted by this insane 100-kilometer-an-hour wind. But then every now and then the wind would stop and like her hair kind of all askew would just kind of like drift for a moment, and just like a very slight smile would come onto her face before the wind just comes back and she sort of resumes this like meditative pose.
Very nice, very nice. And that stillness kind of, do you think that has a significance outside of Grinchell specifically, or is it just in this moment?
I would think that it is a thing that she has in her art. Sort of. Did anyone watch? This is a weird reference. Did anyone watch the Love, Death and Robots episode Zima Blue?
Yeah, and I've read the story that it's based on as well.
Oh, I didn't know it was based on a story. Oh, fucking, I know what I'm doing when I finish the game. So in that story, there's this famous sort of like solar system wide artist who makes the world's most amazing art, and a blue dot sort of starts in all of his works at one stage, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until like he paints entire planets blue. And I think my art practice probably reflects this. Like all of my work, whether it's music or painting or sculpture or whatever, has this growing presence of stillness in some artistic measure or another.
Very nice, very nice. All right, perfect. And so Stephen, you will do the last standard turn of the game, and then we'll do our little epilogue phase. But what were you planning on? What's your card?
So this is going to build off Grinch's movement of still wind. It's perceptions. Using this word carries a weight. When we say it, people form an image and it changes what they think of us. So I'm to play this on a previously defined word and explain how using this word changes others' perceptions of the speaker. I'm actually going to play this on the whoosh as a filler word because I feel like as the still winds movement is growing, it no longer becomes appropriate to use the whoosh as a filler word because we're sort of more vaunting the silence rather than the wind that's blowing around us. So now when anybody slips and continues to use that whoosh, it's very, very noticeable. And instead, silences, pauses, possibly even sort of long gaps in between things that you're saying become more conventional. And that whoosh quite quickly falls out of use.
Perfect. And the prompt here says may have outsiders. So if appropriate for the story, this is the only times when you can bring people from outside the community in, since they're basically at our doorstep now. But you can also keep it to the people at the table, depending on how you want to do it. So,
yeah, because we don't have any outsiders in, or at least not yet in the story. I was thinking more just it's between the people themselves who are consciously committed to still wins, but unconsciously still using the same filler vocalization or fricative or whatever it is, and try and catch themselves not doing it. We could try and play that out if you want, but I like the idea of we just describe what's happening like the other previous ones did as well. Imagine Esther constantly catching herself doing the whooshing sound and then stopping. It would be really funny if I was skilled enough to act that out.
I like the idea as well that perhaps this will happen in the epilogue as outsiders come in. One of the most sort of telling signifiers of an outsider is then discomfort with silence, because by the time they get there, our entire community, just long, pregnant pauses of quiet, are completely socially acceptable in a way that they're just absolutely not in other speaking norms.
Yeah. I'm terrified when I meet people who have that norm. I've met some people like that, and it's terrifying.
Just a little insight into Hedvig.
No, it's just because to me it means they're angry at me. So I just think they're angry at me. So I'm just like, ah. Yeah.
So introverts are terrifying to you.
Somewhat, yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let it be known, introverts.
Yeah, I'm probably terrifying to them in other ways. So hey. No, please don't scratch that thing. I know, I love you very much.
That's the exact same conversation I have with my cats whenever they're doing that. I'm very sorry I had to get mad at you because I love you, but you really can't do that thing.
Yeah, he really doesn't get it either.
All right, fantastic. So, all right, great. So that was our last standard age of the game. And so what the legacy phase looks like is I'll now deal everyone one special card. Oh, actually, there's a little prompt. The last moments are the aftermath, the transitioning from age 3 to the legacy phase. All we wanted was a home of our own, but the strikes didn't stop. We kept the compound operational for as long as we could, but eventually the loss was too much. We had chosen the solitude and they took that from us. Maybe one day someone will find our tattered home. Will it mean anything to them?
Oh,
I'll take
very sad.
Legacy deck and deal 1 to every player. And these don't have to go in turn order, but you'll see, does everyone have a legacy card? It should look different than the other ones, where there's 3 prompts on it. Okay, great. And so here, it says on it, choose one option for your final narrated epilogue. So these, like we did in H3, are just kind of something that you narrate. You don't have to do them in character, but feel free to add in character bits to it if you'd like. It may be about your character or the isolation as a whole and your story. And so you'll pick one of those 3 prompts to be the prompts for your ending to the story itself. So, yeah, and like I said, they don't have to go in order. Once someone feels like they have an appropriate one to add, just play it and tell us which one you picked, and then we can go from there. So feel free to take a moment as you think of which one that you'd like to do.
I'm gonna claim nice and early a ritual for the dead.
Do you want to do that now, or do you want to hold on to it?
I can do, but I fear that I may narratively obligate others to do some stuff, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm happy for other people to go first.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That sounds great. Does anyone have one that they feel like would be a good candidate for going first?
I think I could probably go and then sort of count myself out of whatever Ben's doing, maybe. I think for anti-admin, I'm gonna pick cast out again and again. I think our community has become famous, and there are imitating communities in places, and Anti goes there and expects to be welcomed and is at first, but sooner or later, either he's too radical for the community or the community falls apart in some other way. So he is cast out again and again.
And you made one hell fucking tragic arc for this poor dude.
Yeah, I think he's very stubborn, and I think this is what he would do.
There is some amount of like ideals or hopes to admire there, though, in terms of like that he keeps looking for it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Hakan said smart.
All right, and who would like to go next?
I can take one on mine. So the option I'm taking is something the outsiders stand to learn. So as the algae died away and the last of our stores dwindled, eventually rescue ships were sent. I take it we're forced, the isolation is forced to end somehow. So I'll try and keep it relatively vague. At some point, Esther is up for being taken off the island and away to safety. One of the staging places on the way from the Kerguelen Islands back to the mainland is actually not an oil rig. It's an algae farm in the South Seas. And she notices the scientists are having a little bit of trouble getting the algae to take and bloom. So she goes down, and on the night before she's due to leave, has a little word with one of the scientists, takes a little vial out of her pocket. The camera gets a close-up on the little label, Fortisol 2. And she just leaves it on the scientist's nightstand.
Nice.
Delightful.
I like that.
I'll go. Mine is a feeling of relief in your new life. I joined the movement to have privacy, to be anonymous. And ironically, after the rescue, we were more notorious than ever. But it feels like a load has been lifted off of me. I've made new grips. Nobody uses that word anymore. And I help others by talking about what we went through in our quest for privacy. It is gratifying to see that so many people are now taking up our cause. From being the person who people came to for healing, I have learned to heal myself.
Perfect.
All right, and so for my ritual for the dead, Grindelwald elects to stay on the island in the bones of the colony, the dead colony. She does so knowing full well that she probably won't survive for a particularly long time. Like, there's enough residual material left on the island to keep her going at a really sort of quite subsistence level for a while potentially. But she's all in terms of the love of the islands, and she doesn't ever want to leave. But the main the main communal space where the community came together and where she used to perform and where she had her debate with Auntie and all that kind of stuff, that was actually damaged in that explosion that took like 10 of the lives of our community. So all of the Fortisol was actually stored up against one side. And so when it blew, it took one just whole side off that community center. And so now the stage where she used to stand sort of looks out. There's a wall behind her and there's a wall on either side, but the other opposite wall, like it's almost as if the stage is looking out over the sweeping bay of the island where the algae farms used to be, and you can sort of see like the rotting infrastructure sitting in the water, just kind of decaying over time. And she just sort of lives a really simple life, just kind of like killing the odd seal and just generally kind of subsisting. But every Friday in the afternoon, she fires up like a Jenny and she plugs in her amp and she just stands there on this stage, this ancient, aged, like artsy rocker, and she just belts out like an epic Tainted Waters number to no one and nothing, and it's loud as fuck, and it's like one of the only things that will ever overcome the whistling of the wind, even if it's just for that like 2.5 minutes of rancid punk rock. And then she will unplug the amp and sort of like waddle back to her little hut, and then she'll just wait until next Friday to do it again.
I like that. And I like the idea of the little penguins like a bit far off being like, fuck.
They stole our sound.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, wonderful. And with that, we'll bring down the curtain. And that was Dialect.
Wow,
So,
good job,
so much,
everybody.
Hakan.
Thank you
That was
folks so much for
Thank you.
playing. It was a very nice
So
time.
good.
Hakan, thank you so much for taking us through this. This was a real experience.
Yeah, I'm glad. And yeah, would have never known it was a lot of your first times. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, thank you folks for having us on. So.
Oh,
Yeah, that was super fun.
That was actually a hoot. Now I just want to figure out a way that we can play sort of like Because Language role-playing games semi-regularly.
Yeah, we can do
Could be a
that.
lucrative spin-off series.
Yeah.
Looking
Yes.
forward to
Yeah,
this.
thank you, Hakan. That was wonderful. It's a wonderful game you created. I think it's really cool.
Dialect, a game about language and how it dies, available from Thorny Games. Just a quick shout out to our top patrons: Dustin, Termy, Chris B, Matt, Whitney, Helen, Udo, Jack, Kitty, Lord Mortis, Elias, Michael, Larry, Christopher, Andy, Mai, James, Nigel, Kate, Nasrin, River, Nikolai, Aisha, Moe, Steele, Andrew, Manu, James, Roger, Rian, Colleen, Glyph, Ignacio, Kevin, Dave H., Andy from Logophilius, Samantha, Zoe, Kathy, Rachel, Taylor, Cheyenne, Felicity, Amir, the incomparable Kate B., and new for this episode, Sneaky Lemur. Thanks to all of you for being patrons. Thank you for your support. The music you're hearing was written and performed by Drew Kriplyanov of the band Ryan Bino and Didion's Bible. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Because Language.